Maya Winters stands in a rain-soaked phone booth at midnight, her 3-month-old daughter screaming with hunger in her arms, staring at the one number she swore she'd never dial again, her ex-husband, Dante Moretti, the man whose empire is built on blood and secrets. The divorce papers she signed 6 months ago were supposed to set her free, but freedom tastes like powdered formula she can't afford and eviction notices she can't pay. One call, one cry through the phone, and the most dangerous man in the city will know the truth she's been hiding. The baby he never knew existed might be his. Before we begin this story of second chances and dangerous love, please hit the like button and comment below with your city so I can see how far Maya and Dante's story reaches across the world. Now, let's step into the rain. The rain came down like judgment. Maya Winters pressed her back against the cracked tile wall of the 24-hour laundromat, her cell phone clutched in one trembling hand, her 3-month-old daughter wailing in the other. The fluorescent lights above buzzed and flickered, casting sickly shadows across the rows of industrial washers that hadn't worked in months. At 2 in the morning, she was alone except for the attendant sleeping behind bulletproof glass and the roaches that scattered when she shifted her feet. Ellie's cries pierced through the drumming rain outside, each shriek a knife in Maya's chest. She bounced the baby automatically, a motion her body had learned through 3 months of sleepless survival, but there was no comfort to offer. The last of the formula was gone. The last of her savings was gone. The last of her pride had walked out the door sometime around midnight when she'd realized she had no choice left. Her thumb hovered over the contact she'd never deleted, never called, never forgiven. Dante. Just his name on the screen made her stomach twist with a complicated knot of rage, longing, and pure animal fear. Dante Moretti. Her husband. No, her ex-husband. The man she'd fled from 6 months pregnant, running from marble floors and armed guards and the smell of gunpowder that clung to his expensive suits. The man whose world was built on violence she couldn't stomach and secrets she couldn't live with. The man who didn't know he had a daughter. Maya's finger shook as it descended toward the screen. She'd promised herself she'd rather starve than crawl back to him. She'd rather live in this roach-infested studio apartment with water damage blooming across the ceiling than return to the cage of wealth and danger Dante had built around her. But Ellie's screams weren't about Maya's pride. They were about hunger, pure and simple, and Maya had failed to provide the one thing a mother was supposed to give. She pressed the button. The phone rang once, twice. At nearly 2:30 in the morning, he probably wouldn't even... Maya! His voice hit her like a physical blow, deep, rough with sleep, or maybe whiskey, carrying an edge of something she couldn't name. Not surprise. Dante Moretti was never surprised. Control, always control, even at this ungodly hour. Her throat closed. Ellie wailed louder, her tiny face red and furious. And Maya realized she hadn't thought past making the call. She hadn't prepared words, hadn't planned what to say to the man she'd sworn was dead to her. Maya. Sharper now, and she heard movement on his end, sheets rustling, footsteps. "Where are you?" Her voice cracked. She hated the weakness in it, hated that 6 months of building walls around herself crumbled at the sound of his voice. "I need..." Ellie's scream cut through whatever she'd been about to say, and the silence on the other end of the line went absolute. 5 seconds. 10. Maya could hear her own heartbeat over the rain. "Is that a baby?" Dante's voice had changed completely, stripped of the casual authority she remembered. Something raw lived in those 4 words. Maya closed her eyes. This was the moment, the threshold she couldn't uncross once she stepped over it. "Yes." "How old?" 3 months. Another beat of silence, but this one vibrated with calculation she knew too well. Dante Moretti didn't need things spelled out. His mind worked faster than most people could speak, connecting dots they didn't even know existed. "Where are you?" Not a question this time, a command. "Dante, I need money for formula. I'll pay you back, Where are you?" The steel in his voice made her spine straighten instinctively, a Pavlovian response she hated herself for keeping. She glanced through the rain-streaked window at the street sign visible under the broken streetlight. "Lincoln and 8th, the laundromat." "Is it safe?" "Safe." She almost laughed. She lived in a neighborhood where gunshots were background noise and the lock on her apartment door was held together with duct tape. Safe was a word from another lifetime. Safe enough. Stay there. Don't move. Don't hang up. Dante, don't move. She heard him speaking to someone else, his voice muffled but urgent. Marco, get the car. Lincoln and 8th now, and call Romano. I want 6 men on that corner in the next 10 minutes. I don't need 6 men, Maya said, but her protest was weak. Ellie was still crying, and exhaustion made her bones feel like they were dissolving. I just need... You called me. His voice came back clear and hard. That means you're mine to protect. You don't get to argue about how I do that. I'm not yours anymore. We're divorced. The pause that followed felt dangerous. Are we? Something in the way he said it made her skin prickle. Before she could ask what he meant, he was talking again. How long since you've eaten? Maya looked down at Ellie, then at her own reflection in the dark window. A ghost of the woman who'd once worn designer dresses to charity galas. Her clothes hung loose on a frame that had shed 20 pounds she couldn't afford to lose. When had she last eaten? Yesterday? The day before? I'm fine. You're a terrible liar. You always have been. She heard an engine roar to life on his end. I'm coming to you, 15 minutes. No. Panic spiked through her fatigue. No, Dante, just send someone with money. You don't have to. 12 minutes now. I drive faster than Marco. A pause. Is she mine, Maya? The question hung in the air between them like a blade. Maya looked down at Ellie's scrunched face, at the dark hair that was starting to curl exactly like her father's, at the shape of her eyes that Maya saw every time she looked in a mirror, but knew came from somewhere else too. I don't know, she whispered. It was the truth. The timeline was close, so close. She'd left Dante 6 months pregnant, but she'd been pregnant when she left. 3 months before that, they'd had one of their volcanic fights that ended the way they always did, with Dante's hands in her hair and Maya's nails down his back, and both of them swearing it was the last time, even as they knew it was a lie. Then I'm her father until proven otherwise, Dante said, and the finality in his voice made something in Maya's chest crack open. 10 minutes. Stay on the line. She wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him she'd changed her mind, that she'd figure something else out, that crawling back to him was worse than starving. But Ellie's cries had weakened to tired whimpers, and Maya could feel her daughter's tiny body trembling with exhaustion and hunger. So she stayed on the line. She listened to the sound of Dante's breathing and the roar of what she recognized as his Maserati taking corners too fast. She listened to him bark orders at someone. Clear the south route. I don't care if you have to close the street. And felt the old familiar terror of what it meant to be connected to a man who could command that kind of power at 3 a.m. Talk to me, Dante said suddenly. What? You're about to pass out. I can hear it in your breathing. Talk to me. Keep yourself awake. I'm fine. Maya. Her name was soft this time, almost gentle. Please. That word, please, from Dante Moretti's mouth was so rare it shocked her into compliance. She looks like you, Maya heard herself say. Dark hair. Your eyes, I think, but it's hard to tell yet. She has your temper. She's screaming at 3 a.m. That's your temper. Despite everything, Maya felt a ghost of a smile. I never screamed. You threw a crystal vase at my head. You deserved it. I did. No argument, just acknowledgement. What else? She's strong. She holds her head up already. The pediatrician at the free clinic said she's ahead of the curve. Maya shifted Ellie to her other arm, trying to ease the ache in her shoulders. She doesn't sleep well. She fights it, like she's afraid she'll miss something. Also like me. Everything's like you. I don't know if I'm in there at all. You're in there. His voice dropped lower. She survived this long on your strength alone. That's all you, Dolcezza. The old endearment hit her like a slap. Sweetness. He'd called her that on their wedding night, whispered it against her skin in the darkness, used it as both apology and seduction through 5 years of marriage that had been equal parts passion and destruction. Don't call me that. 7 minutes. Stay with me. Through the window, Maya saw a black sedan pull up to the curb, and her heart lurched. But it wasn't Dante's Maserati. It was something larger, more brutal, with windows tinted so dark they looked like oil. 4 men emerged, all of them moving with the precise economy she recognized as military training. They fanned out around the laundromat, taking positions that covered every approach. "Your men are here," she said. "Good. You're safe now." "I was safe before." "You were starving and alone with a baby at 3 in the morning in a neighborhood that sees 4 homicides a week. You weren't safe. You were surviving, and barely." His voice hardened. "That ends tonight. You don't get to decide that." "I already did. 4 minutes." Maya watched one of the guards, she recognized him now as Marco, Dante's head of security, enter the laundromat. He was a mountain of a man, 6'5" and broad as a door, with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow and eyes that missed nothing. He'd been kind to her once, had slipped her information about Dante's movements when she'd been planning her escape. He saw her in the corner and his expression cracked for just a moment, shock, maybe pity, before the professional mask slammed back down. "Mrs. Moretti," he said, his voice gentle despite his appearance. "Mr. Moretti asked me to secure the perimeter. Is there anything you need immediately?" Mrs. Moretti, the name she'd tried to shed along with everything else. "Formula," Maya said, "and diapers, size 1. Marco had his phone out before she finished speaking, relaying the request to someone. 2 minutes, he promised. Then, lower, "It's good to see you, ma'am. We've been worried." "We?" Maya asked, but Marco's attention had shifted to the door. The Maserati arrived like a storm. Dante didn't park. He abandoned the car in the middle of the street, door open, engine running. Maya had exactly enough time to register his silhouette in the doorway before he was crossing the space between them in long strides that ate up the distance. He looked like he'd dressed in the dark, which he probably had. Black pants, a white shirt unbuttoned at the collar, no jacket despite the November cold. His hair was disheveled, his jaw shadowed with stubble, and his eyes were locked on Ellie with an intensity that made Maya's breath catch. He stopped 3 feet away, and for a moment neither of them spoke. Maya could see him cataloging details the way he cataloged everything. Ellie's dark curls, the shape of her ears, the way her tiny hand had fisted in Maya's worn sweater. "Can I hold her?" His voice was rough, nothing like the commands he'd given over the phone. Maya's arms tightened instinctively. Every maternal instinct she'd developed screamed against handing her daughter to this man, this beautiful, dangerous man who solved problems with violence and built empires on fear. But Ellie chose that moment to let out another weak cry, and Dante's expression cracked completely. "Please," he said again, "let me meet my daughter." My daughter. Not the baby. Not her. Claimed already, with absolute certainty, regardless of what biology might eventually prove. Maya stood on shaking legs and transferred Ellie into his arms, watching as Dante's large hands she'd seen break bones, curved with infinite gentleness around the baby's small body. He brought her close to his chest, and Ellie's crying stopped almost immediately, her dark eyes blinking up at this stranger who held her like she was made of starlight. "Hi, little one," Dante murmured, and Maya watched the most ruthless man she'd ever known transform into someone she didn't recognize. "I'm here now. Everything's going to be okay." A car pulled up outside. One of Dante's people with the formula and diapers. Marco brought them in, and Maya reached for them, but Dante was already moving. "Sit," he ordered, but it was softer than before. "I'll make the bottle. You look like you're about to collapse." "I can—" "Maya." He looked up at her, and she saw something raw in his face. "Let me take care of this, please." So she sat, because her legs really were about to give out, and watched as Dante Moretti, who commanded an empire and never showed weakness, fumbled with formula and warm water like any new father. He had to ask Marco how much powder to use. His hands shook slightly as he screwed the nipple onto the bottle. But when he settled into the chair beside Maya and brought the bottle to Ellie's lips, watching her latch on with desperate hunger, his expression was pure wonder. "How long has it been since she ate?" he asked quietly. 14 hours. I ran out yesterday afternoon. I was going to go to the food bank this morning, but they're only open weekdays." Dante's jaw tightened, but he didn't look away from Ellie. And you? When did you last eat? I'm fine. Marco. Dante didn't raise his voice, but the command was absolute. Call the Meridian. Tell them to send a full hot meal immediately. Include... He glanced at Maya. What do you want? I don't... What do you miss? What have you been craving? The question broke something in her. Maybe it was the exhaustion, or the relief of watching Ellie finally eat, or the surreal gentleness in Dante's voice. But she felt tears burn her eyes. The spinach and ricotta ravioli from that place in Little Italy, she whispered. And the bread. The rosemary bread. Matteo's. I'll buy the restaurant if they can't deliver at this hour. He nodded at Marco, who was already making the call. Then Dante turned back to Maya, and his free hand came up to cup her face. When was the last time you slept? She couldn't remember. Sleep was something she snatched in 20-minute increments between feedings and the terror of unpaid bills. Sleep was a luxury she'd traded for survival. Come here. Dante adjusted his hold on Ellie and used his other arm to pull Maya against his side. She should have resisted, should have maintained the boundaries she'd built. But his warmth was overwhelming after months of being cold, and his strength was shelter after months of bearing everything alone. So she leaned into him and felt her body surrender to exhaustion, even as her mind screamed that this was a mistake. I've got her, Dante said softly. Close your eyes, just for a few minutes. We need to talk, Maya mumbled against his shoulder. About boundaries, about what this means, about we will. But right now you're going to sleep, and I'm going to feed our daughter, and the rest can wait until you're strong enough to fight me properly. She wanted to argue, but Ellie was eating, finally eating, and Dante's heartbeat under her ear was steady as thunder, and the darkness was rising up to claim her. The last thing she heard before she slipped under was Dante speaking quietly to Marco. Get the East Wing ready, full nursery setup, everything, and call Dr. Castellano. I want a pediatrician on site within the hour. The East Wing, boss? You sure? She's not going back to wherever she's been living. Neither of them are. She might not agree. Then I'll convince her. But one way or another, Marco, my family is coming home tonight. Maya wanted to protest, wanted to remind him she wasn't his family anymore, that she'd signed papers and walked away and built a life without him. But consciousness was already slipping away, and some traitorous part of her heart whispered that maybe, just for tonight, it was okay to let someone else carry the weight. Just for tonight, she could rest. When Maya woke, she was moving. Panic jolted through her before her eyes even opened. Ellie. Where was Ellie? But then she heard the soft snuffling sounds of a sleeping baby and felt the leather seat beneath her and realized she was in a car. Dante's car, specifically. She recognized the scent of the leather, the particular hum of the engine, even before she opened her eyes to see the dashboard display glowing in the pre-dawn darkness. She was in the front passenger seat, reclined back, with a cashmere blanket tucked around her that she recognized from Dante's office. In the back seat, she could see Ellie's carrier, a top-of-the-line model that definitely hadn't existed an hour ago, secured properly, with their daughter sleeping peacefully. Dante sat in the driver's seat, one hand on the wheel, his attention split between the road and glancing back at Ellie every few seconds. Where are we going? Maya's voice was rough with sleep. Home. I have a home. You have a studio apartment with water damage and a broken lock that I could kick open in under 5 seconds. He didn't look at her. That's not a home. That's a disaster waiting to happen. Maya pushed herself upright, shoving the blanket off. You had no right to... You fell asleep. Was I supposed to wake you and send you back to that place? Now he did look at her, and his eyes were hard. Or drive you there and watch you carry a 3-month-old up 4 flights of stairs with no working elevator. How do you know about the stairs? I've known where you were living for 3 months, Maya. Did you really think I wouldn't keep eyes on you? The admission hit her like cold water. You've been watching me? From a distance, making sure you were safe, making sure... He bit off whatever he'd been about to say. I told you when you left that I wouldn't come after you unless you asked. I kept that promise, but I never promised not to know where you were. That's the same thing as following me. No, it's not. His hands tightened on the wheel. Following you would be appearing in your life, inserting myself into your choices. I didn't do that. I stayed away even when every instinct I have screamed at me to drag you back. I watched you get thinner every week. Watched you take 3 buses to work because you couldn't afford a car. Watched you cry yourself to sleep when you thought no one could see. Stop, Maya's voice broke. Stop talking. I watched you struggle and I did nothing because you asked for space and I was trying to give you what you wanted. But the second you called me, the second I heard her crying, that promise ended. He took the turn that Maya recognized as leading to the estate. You're exhausted, you're malnourished, and you're raising a baby in conditions that aren't fit for a dog. That ends now. You don't get to make that choice. You made that choice when you called me. The gate appeared ahead, 20 feet of wrought iron that had always made Maya think of a beautiful prison. It swung open as they approached, recognizing the car, and then they were driving up the long curved driveway lined with manicured trees that probably cost more to maintain than Maya's rent. The estate rose ahead of them like something from a Gothic novel, all stone and angles and windows that reflected the dawn. Maya had sworn she'd never see it again, had promised herself she'd rather die than return to this beautiful cage. But Ellie made a small sound in her sleep, and Maya couldn't regret the call that had brought them here, not if it meant her daughter would eat. Dante pulled up to the front entrance where Marco and 2 other men waited. Before Maya could reach for her door, Marco had it open, offering his hand with the same careful courtesy he'd always shown her. "Welcome home, Mrs. Moretti." "I'm not," Maya started, but Dante was already at the back door, unbuckling Ellie's carrier with practiced ease that he couldn't possibly have learned in the last 2 hours. "This way," he said, and started up the steps without waiting to see if Maya would follow. She hesitated for exactly 3 seconds before her feet carried her after him. She told herself it was just to make sure Ellie was okay, just to see where he was taking their daughter, nothing more. The interior of the estate was exactly as she remembered, and somehow worse. Vast spaces of marble and crystal, artwork worth millions on the walls, evidence of wealth that had been built on activities she'd never been allowed to ask about. Staff appeared like ghosts, taking positions along the walls, their faces professionally blank even as their eyes tracked every movement. Dante headed for the main staircase, and Maya followed him up 2 flights to the east wing. He stopped at a door she remembered as storage, pushed it open, and Maya's breath caught. The room had been completely transformed into a nursery. Soft cream walls, a crib that looked like it belonged in a palace, a changing table fully stocked, a rocking chair positioned near French doors that opened onto a balcony overlooking the gardens. Toys, books, clothes in every size, everything a baby could possibly need, organized with military precision. "When did you—" Maya couldn't finish the sentence. "I had a plan," Dante said quietly, settling Ellie's carrier on the changing table and beginning to undo the straps. "In case you ever came back. In case there was ever a child." He lifted Ellie out, supporting her head with the careful attention of someone who'd studied exactly how to do this. "I updated it monthly. Changed the decor 3 times. Marco thought I was losing my mind." Maya watched him carry Ellie to the crib, watched him settle her daughter onto the mattress with infinite care, watched him stand there looking down at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. "Your room is through there." He gestured to a connecting door without looking away from Ellie. "Full bathroom, walk-in closet. I had them stock it with your sizes, but if the clothes aren't right, we'll get new ones tomorrow." "Dante, there's food in the sitting room next door, the ravioli you wanted, plus other options. Eat something, then sleep in a real bed." Finally, he turned to face her. "We can fight about everything else in the morning, but tonight, just for tonight, let me take care of you both." "I can't stay here." "You can. You will." He moved closer, and Maya saw exhaustion in his eyes that matched her own. "I know you hate me. I know I gave you 1,000 reasons to leave, and not one good reason to come back, but she—" He glanced back at the crib. "She deserves better than cold and hunger and fear, and you deserve better than destroying yourself trying to be strong enough for both of you. You're a criminal." The words came out harder than she meant them. "Your hands are covered in blood. I can't raise a daughter in that world." "I know. No denial, no excuse. But tonight isn't about my world or your principles. Tonight is about a baby who needs to be safe and fed, and a woman who needs to rest before she breaks completely. He reached out and touched her face, his thumb tracing the hollow of her cheek. Tomorrow, we can negotiate, set boundaries, bring in lawyers and counselors, and draw up whatever agreements make you feel protected. But tonight, Maya, please, just accept shelter, nothing more. She wanted to keep fighting, wanted to grab Ellie and run before the weight of this place settled over her again. But her body was screaming for rest, and the smell of rosemary bread was drifting through the door, and Ellie was sleeping peacefully for the first time in days. One night, Maya whispered. That's all. One night, Dante agreed, but they both knew it was a lie. Nket. Maya woke to sunlight streaming through curtains she didn't remember closing and the scent of coffee that smelled like heaven. For 3 confused seconds, she didn't know where she was. Then memory returned in a flood. The phone call, the laundromat, Dante's face when he saw Ellie, the drive to the estate, and she jackknifed upright in panic. The bedroom was exactly as beautiful as the nursery, all soft grays and creams with furniture that probably cost more than she'd made in a year. Her clothes from last night were gone, replaced by a silk robe laid across the foot of the bed. Through the connecting door, she could hear voices. Maya grabbed the robe and rushed into the nursery to find Dante sitting in the rocking chair with Ellie in his arms, feeding her a bottle while a woman in a white coat made notes on a tablet. Perfectly healthy weight for her age, the woman was saying. But I'd like to see the mother as well, if possible. The nutritional deficiencies that... She stopped when she saw Maya in the doorway. Dante looked up, and something in his expression softened. You're awake. Dr. Castellano, this is Maya. Maya, Dr. Sarah Castellano. She's been checking Ellie over. Without my permission? Maya's voice came out sharper than she intended. With mine, Dante said calmly. I'm her father. That gives me the right to ensure her health. You don't know that you're her father. Don't I? He tilted his head, and Maya saw the certainty in his eyes. Look at her, Maya. Really look. You know exactly who she belongs to. Dr. Castellano cleared her throat diplomatically. I can perform a paternity test if that would help clarify matters. It's a simple cheek swab for both parties. Do it, Dante said immediately. I didn't agree to that, Maya protested. You don't have to. I'm consenting on Ellie's behalf as her presumed father, and I'm providing my own sample. The test doesn't require anything from you. Dante's eyes never left Maya's face. Unless you'd rather live with the uncertainty? Maya wanted to argue, but part of her, the part that had spent 3 months looking at Ellie's face and seeing Dante in every expression, knew the fight was pointless. Fine, she said. Test her. Test yourself. But that doesn't mean anything changes. It means everything changes. Dante stood, settling Ellie against his shoulder with practiced ease that he definitely shouldn't have developed overnight. Dr. Castellano, how is she? Thriving, considering the circumstances. She's slightly underweight, but otherwise healthy. Her mother, on the other hand, the doctor turned to Maya with professional concern. You're significantly malnourished, dehydrated, exhausted to the point of physical danger. When was your last full meal? Yesterday, last night, the ravioli. Before that? Maya couldn't remember. Days blurred together when you were trying to stretch every dollar across diapers and rent and keep yourself fed on whatever was cheapest. Dr. Castellano made a note. I'm going to recommend a full nutritional panel plus rest and regular meals. Mr. Moretti has already asked me to set up a daily check-in schedule for both you and the baby. He doesn't get to decide my medical care. Then decide it yourself, Dante said. But decide while eating breakfast. Marco had the chef prepare... He gestured to the sitting room where Maya could now see a table laid out with enough food for 6 people. Her stomach betrayed her with an audible growl. I'll give you privacy, Dr. Castellano said tactfully. But I'd like to examine you after you've eaten, Ms. Winters, just to establish a baseline. She left, and Maya was alone with Dante and Ellie in a nursery that looked like a palace. The absurdity of the situation hit her all over again. 24 hours ago, she'd been counting change for the bus, and now she was standing in a room that probably cost more than she'd made in her entire life. You can't just make decisions about her without consulting me, Maya said. I can, and I did. Someone had to. Dante adjusted Ellie in his arms, and the baby made a small, satisfied sound. You were too tired to think straight. I'm not apologizing for ensuring our daughter's health. Stop calling her that. You don't know. I know. He crossed to her, close enough that she could see the dark circles under his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept at all. I knew the second I saw her. But if you need the test to believe it, fine. We'll do the test. 3 days, and we'll have confirmation of what we both already know. Maya wanted to argue, but Ellie chose that moment to turn her head, and Maya saw her daughter's eyes, Dante's eyes, undeniably, blink up at her with perfect trust. She needs to be changed, Maya said instead. I did that an hour ago. At her shocked expression, Dante's mouth quirked. Marco walked me through it. Apparently I'm a natural. You, Dante Moretti, changed a diaper. I'm her father. What did you expect? I expected you to hire someone to do it. I have hired someone. A team of someone's, actually. Nannies on rotation, a pediatric nurse for night shifts, a nutritionist to plan age-appropriate meals as she grows. He saw her expression darken and added quickly, but their support. Backup. I'm not delegating my daughter's care to strangers. You can't be a full-time father. You run an empire. Then I'll adjust how I run it. He said it like it was simple, like reshaping his entire life around an infant he'd met 12 hours ago was a minor logistical challenge. Marco's been wanting more responsibility anyway. Dante, Maya felt something crack in her chest. You don't understand. This isn't, you can't just decide to be a father because it's convenient. It's hard. It's every day, every night, no breaks. It's crying at 3 a.m. and spit up on your clothes and never sleeping properly again. I know. You don't. You can't. You built your entire life around control and power and getting what you want. A baby doesn't work that way. You can't order her to stop crying or threaten her into sleeping through the night. I know that too. He moved closer, and Maya could see something raw in his face. I'm not stupid, Maya. I know I don't have the first idea what I'm doing, but I'm going to learn because she's mine and you're... He stopped himself. Because she deserves a father who shows up, and I'm going to be that even if it kills me. It might, Maya said, but her voice had lost its edge. Then I'll die trying. He held her gaze, held her. But before I do, you're going to eat breakfast. Come on. He carried Ellie into the sitting room, and after a moment Maya followed. The food was obscene in its abundance. Eggs, bacon, fresh fruit, pastries, 3 types of juice, coffee that smelled like it had been brewed by angels. Maya sat down intending to pick at a piece of toast and found herself eating with the desperate hunger of 3 months of deprivation. Dante watched her, still holding Ellie, saying nothing. Where did you sleep? Maya asked between bites of the best omelet she'd ever tasted. I didn't. Dante. I was watching her, making sure she was breathing, learning her patterns. He looked down at Ellie with an expression Maya had never seen on his face, complete vulnerability. She's so small. How are they this small? Despite everything, Maya felt her heart soften. They're pretty small. I'm terrified of breaking her. You won't. How do you know? Because you're holding her like she's made of starlight, and that's exactly how you're supposed to hold them. Maya took a long drink of orange juice. You're doing fine. I have no idea what I'm doing. Neither did I. Neither does anyone. We all just figure it out as we go. They sat in silence for a while, the only sounds the clink of Maya's fork and Ellie's occasional snuffling noises. Through the French doors, Maya could see the gardens in full autumn glory. Manicured hedges, flower beds, probably maintained by a team of gardeners, paths that wound through what she remembered as being at least 3 acres. We need to talk, Maya said finally. I know. About boundaries, expectations, what this arrangement actually is. I know that too. Dante shifted Ellie to his other arm. But first, I need to tell you something. Something in his tone made Maya set down her fork. What? The divorce papers you signed 6 months ago, the ones your lawyer filed and told you were processed. What about them? Dante's expression went carefully neutral. They were never filed. The words didn't make sense at first. Maya stared at him, trying to parse meaning from a statement that seemed designed to confuse. What do you mean they weren't filed? I mean exactly that. Your lawyer brought them to my lawyer. My lawyer was supposed to file them with the court. He didn't. The room tilted. That's not... You can't just not file divorce papers. That's illegal. It's unethical. Not technically illegal if no one complains. Dante met her eyes without flinching. And no one was going to complain because I paid your lawyer enough to forget the matter entirely. Maya stood up so fast her chair fell backward. You what? I paid him to bury the papers and tell you they'd been filed. You've been legally married to me for the entire 6 months you thought you were free. No. The word came out strangled. No, that's not... You can't... I did. No apology in his voice, just flat statement. I told you when you left that I wouldn't come after you. I kept that promise. But I never promised to let you go completely. You... Maya couldn't find words big enough for the betrayal. You lied to me. You let me think I was free when I was still tied to me. Yes. Dante stood, carefully settling Ellie into a bassinet that hadn't been there yesterday. I'm not proud of it, Maya, but I'm not apologizing for it either. How dare you? How dare I what? Keep a legal connection to the only woman I've ever loved? Refuse to sign papers that would have made it permanent when you left me? His voice rose to match hers. You walked out 6 months pregnant with my child and disappeared. Did you really expect me to just let that go? I wasn't pregnant when I left. I didn't know I was pregnant for another month. But you were carrying her, Dante pointed at Ellie, and you never told me. Never called, never sent word. You let me think you were just gone. Because I needed to be gone. Because every day with you was a choice between love and survival, and I chose survival. And I chose to keep one thread connecting us so that if you ever needed me, if you ever called, I could bring you home. He moved closer, and Maya saw something desperate in his eyes. I knew you'd hate me for it. I knew it was wrong. But I did it anyway because the alternative was watching you slip completely out of my life, and I couldn't do that. So instead you trapped me. No. If I'd wanted to trap you, I would have come after you, would have used the marriage to force you back into this house. I didn't do that. I let you go, let you build whatever life you wanted, even though it killed me to watch you struggle. The only thing I kept was the legal tie, a piece of paper that meant nothing unless you needed it to mean something. And last night? Maya's voice shook with fury and something else she didn't want to name. When you brought me here, gave me shelter, promised me safety, were you planning to tell me then that I was still legally bound to you? Yes. He didn't hesitate. I was going to tell you this morning, after you'd slept and eaten and seen a doctor. I was going to lay it all out and let you decide what you wanted to do with the information. What I want to do is leave. Then leave. Dante's voice went soft and dangerous. The door's right there, but Ellie stays. Maya's world stopped. What did you just say? She's my daughter. If the paternity test proves otherwise, I'll reassess, but until then, she stays with me. You're welcome to stay too, I'd prefer it, but I won't let my child go back to that apartment. You can't keep her from me. I can. You're malnourished and exhausted to the point of medical concern. Doctor, Castellano's report will note that you're not currently fit to care for an infant alone. Add in the fact that we're still legally married, which gives me equal parental rights, and any judge would side with me if you try to fight this. Maya felt ice slide down her spine. You're threatening me. I'm protecting our daughter. Dante's expression was implacable. And I'm offering you a choice, Maya. Stay here, where you're both safe and fed and cared for. Let me help you recover your strength. Give us time to figure out what comes next. He paused. Or leave, and spend the next 6 months fighting me in court while Ellie stays here anyway, because I have the resources to tie this up legally until she's old enough to vote. I hate you. The words came out broken. I know. Gentleness crept back into his voice. But hate me here, where you can eat 3 meals a day and sleep in a real bed. Hate me while our daughter is safe and thriving. We can fight about everything else, but at least fight me from a position of strength instead of desperation. Maya looked at Ellie sleeping peacefully in the bassinet, then at the man who had just admitted to manipulating her freedom for 6 months. The worst part was that he was right. She was exhausted, underfed, barely keeping her head above water. Fighting him now would be suicide. But staying meant accepting a cage, even a beautiful one. 1 week, she heard herself say. I'll stay for 1 week. Let Ellie settle. Let the paternity test come back. Let me get my strength back. Then we negotiate real terms. 1 week, Dante agreed. But I'm bringing in help. What kind of help? A therapist? Someone neutral who can mediate between us, make sure I'm not... He seemed to search for words. Make sure you have someone on your side. Someone to advocate for what you need. To call me out if I'm crossing lines. You'd really do that? Bring in someone who might tell you no? I'd do anything if it means you stay. His eyes held hers. Even accept limits I've never accepted before. Maya looked around the beautiful room, at the breakfast she couldn't have afforded, at the daughter who was sleeping peacefully for the first time in her life. Then she looked at Dante, the man she'd loved and fled from, the father who'd held their daughter like she was precious, the criminal who'd just admitted to trapping her in a marriage she'd thought was over. 1 week, she repeated. Then we decide what happens next. 1 week, Dante said. And Maya settled back into the chair, reaching for her coffee, trying to pretend she didn't see the satisfaction in his eyes, or feel the treacherous relief in her own heart that, at least for now, she didn't have to be strong enough for both of them anymore. Outside, the November morning brightened over the estate, and inside a nursery fit for royalty, Ellie slept on, unaware that her first night in her father's house had just rewritten the rules of her mother's freedom. The cage door had closed, but for the first time in months, Maya had eaten her fill. The question was whether survival was worth the price of her pride, and she had 1 week to figure out the answer. The therapist arrived on day 3. Maya was in the garden with Ellie when Marco appeared at the French doors, his expression carefully neutral in that way that meant Dante had sent him on a mission he knew she wouldn't like. Mrs. Moretti, Mr. Moretti asked me to inform you that Dr. Reynolds has arrived for your first session. Maya looked down at Ellie, who was dozing in her arms in the November sunshine, wrapped in a cashmere blanket that probably cost more than Maya's former monthly rent. 3 days in this house, and already her daughter looked different, healthier, more content, with color in her cheeks that hadn't been there before. 3 days and Maya herself had gained back 4 pounds, slept more than she had in months, and felt her body slowly remembering what it was like not to exist in a state of constant crisis. 3 days and she still woke up every morning with rage sitting like a stone in her chest, when she remembered that Dante had lied to her about the divorce. Tell him I didn't agree to this, Maya said. He anticipated that response, ma'am. He asked me to remind you that you agreed to 1 week of trying things his way before negotiating new terms. I agreed to stay in the house. I didn't agree to therapy. Marco's expression softened slightly. Dr. Reynolds comes highly recommended. She specializes in family mediation and high-conflict situations. Mr. Moretti specifically requested someone who wouldn't be intimidated by him. That caught Maya's attention. He asked for someone who wouldn't be intimidated? His exact words were, "Find someone who'll tell me to go to hell if I deserve it." Dr. Reynolds apparently told him exactly that during their initial phone consultation when he tried to dictate the terms of treatment. Despite herself, Maya felt a flicker of curiosity. Anyone who could tell Dante Moretti to go to hell and live to schedule appointments was someone worth meeting. "Fine," she said. "But Ellie comes with me." "Of course." Dr. Reynolds is set up in the blue sitting room. It's neutral territory. Mr. Moretti's office was deemed too much his space, and your suite too much yours. Maya followed Marco through the house, trying not to notice how the staff had started treating her differently over the past 3 days. The first morning they'd been carefully neutral, professional to the point of invisibility. By day 2 they were greeting her by name. Now they smiled when they saw Ellie, and the chef had started asking Maya's preferences for meals without being prompted. The blue sitting room was on the main floor, decorated in soft blues and creams with furniture that managed to be both elegant and comfortable. A woman in her late 50s stood by the window, and when she turned, Maya immediately understood why Dante had chosen her. Doctor. Catherine Reynolds had steel gray hair cut in a sharp bob, intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and the kind of presence that suggested she'd seen everything twice and wasn't impressed by any of it. She wore a simple navy suit and no jewelry except a wedding band worn thin with years. "Ms. Winters," she said, her voice warm but professional, "thank you for agreeing to meet with me, and this must be Ellie." "I didn't exactly agree," Maya said. "I was informed. So I gathered. Your husband has a talent for presenting fait accompli and calling it negotiation." Dr. Reynolds gestured to a comfortable sofa. "Please, sit. I promise this isn't an ambush, though I understand why you'd be suspicious of anything Mr. Moretti arranges." Maya settled onto the sofa, adjusting Ellie in her arms. "Did he tell you what he did? About the divorce papers?" "He did, in our initial consultation, along with several other relevant details about your marriage and separation." "Doctor." Reynolds took a chair across from Maya, maintaining a distance that felt respectful rather than clinical. "For what it's worth, I told him that was an unconscionable violation of your autonomy, and that if he expected me to help him manipulate you into staying, he could find another therapist." "What did he say?" "That he didn't want me to manipulate you into anything. He wanted me to make sure you had someone in your corner who couldn't be bought or intimidated, someone who would advocate for your needs even if, especially if, they conflicted with his desires." Maya studied the woman's face, looking for deception or hidden agenda. "Why would you agree to that?" "Because in 25 years of family therapy, I've never had a client with Mr. Moretti's resources actively request someone to check his power. That alone suggested he was serious about change." Dr. Reynolds leaned forward slightly. "But I want to be very clear about my role here, Miss Winters. I'm not his therapist. I'm not your therapist. I'm a mediator whose job is to help you both navigate an extremely complicated situation with a child's welfare at the center. If at any point you feel I'm not serving that role fairly, you fire me. Not him. You." "He'd allow that?" "I made it a condition of my involvement. You have unilateral veto power over my continued participation." She pulled out a document from her briefcase. "It's in writing. This contract gives you the right to terminate my services at any time, for any reason, with no penalty and no question. It also stipulates that anything you tell me in private sessions stays private unless you give explicit permission otherwise." Maya took the contract, scanning the dense legal language. It said exactly what Dr. Reynolds claimed, and more. There were clauses about Maya's right to independent legal counsel, about ensuring she had access to resources outside Dante's control, about mandatory cooling-off periods before any major decisions. He agreed to all this? He insisted on most of it. The legal counsel provision was his idea. Dr. Reynolds watched Maya's face. "I think he's terrified of repeating whatever mistakes drove you away the first time." "He should be terrified. He lied to me for 6 months." "Yes, he did, and that's something we need to address directly." Dr. Reynolds adjusted her glasses. "But before we get into the heavy material, I need to ask, how are you doing? Physically, emotionally? Not as Dante's wife or Ellie's mother, just you." The question was so simple and so rare that Maya felt her throat tighten. When was the last time someone had asked about her as a person, rather than a role? "I'm tired," Maya said quietly, "and angry, and confused because I spent 6 months hating him and building walls, and then 3 days here and my body remembers what it's like to feel safe, and I hate that too. Safety is a powerful drug. It's a trap." "Sometimes," Dr. Reynolds agreed, "and sometimes it's just safety. The trick is learning to tell the difference." She glanced at Ellie. "How's she doing?" "Better. So much better." Maya looked down at her daughter's peaceful face. "She's eating well, sleeping better. The pediatrician says she's gaining weight perfectly. She's happy." "And that makes you feel guilty?" It wasn't a question. Maya nodded anyway. "Because if she's better here than she was with me alone, what does that say about me as a mother?" "It says you were surviving an impossible situation with limited resources. There's no shame in that, Ms. Winters." Dr. Reynolds' voice was firm. "You kept your daughter alive and safe for 3 months on your own. That's not failure. That's heroism." It didn't feel heroic. It felt like drowning. Most heroism does. Dr. Reynolds made a note. "I'd like to suggest something if you're open to it." "What?" "Individual sessions in addition to the mediation work. Just you, processing everything you've been through. The pregnancy alone, the separation, the financial stress, new motherhood in crisis conditions. That's trauma, Ms. Winters. It needs to be addressed. I don't have time for trauma. I have a daughter, which is exactly why you need to address it. You can't pour from an empty cup, and yours is bone dry. Dr. Reynolds leaned back. But that's a conversation for later. Right now, I believe Mr. Moretti is waiting to join us for the first mediation session. Are you ready for that? Maya's first instinct was to say no, but Ellie made a small sound in her sleep, and Maya thought about the week ahead, 6 more days before she was supposed to make decisions about her future. What exactly happens in a mediation session? We talk. You both get to say hard things in a space where I make sure the conversation stays productive instead of destructive. We identify needs, boundaries, and areas of potential compromise. Dr. Reynolds stood. And if either of you starts acting like an ass, I call it out. That's the deal. Despite everything, Maya felt a small smile tug at her mouth. You really told him to go to hell? I told him that if he thought hiring a therapist would make you more compliant, he could go to hell and take his retainer with him. He laughed and doubled the fee. Dr. Reynolds moved toward the door. Shall I invite him in? Maya took a breath and nodded. Dante entered a moment later, and Maya was struck by how different he looked from the man who'd held Ellie in the laundromat 3 nights ago. He was clean-shaven now, dressed in charcoal slacks and a black sweater that probably cost what Maya used to make in a month. But there were still shadows under his eyes that suggested he wasn't sleeping any better than she was. His gaze went immediately to Ellie, and something in his expression softened before he looked at Maya. Thank you for doing this, he said. I didn't have much choice. You always have a choice. I'm just grateful you chose to stay. Dr. Reynolds cleared her throat. Mr. Moretti, please sit. We have a lot to cover and limited time. Dante took the chair next to Dr. Reynolds, angling it slightly so he could see both women. Maya noticed he kept a careful distance, not crowding her space. Let's start with the obvious, Dr. Reynolds said. Mr. Moretti, you admitted to Ms. Winters that you prevented the divorce from being finalized. Walk me through your thinking there. Dante's jaw tightened, but he didn't look away from Maya. I was afraid that if I let her go completely, I'd never get her back. The marriage was the only legal tie I had left, so I kept it. Even though you knew it was wrong. Even though I knew it was wrong. And even though it violated her consent and autonomy. Yes. No excuse, just acknowledgement. Dr. Reynolds turned to Maya. How does that make you feel? Like I'm still trapped. Like every decision I made in the last 6 months was built on a lie. Maya's voice shook. I thought I was free. I thought I was building a life outside his control. But I was never free at all. You were free, Dante said quietly. I didn't interfere with your life, didn't use the marriage to... That's not freedom! Maya's voice rose, and Ellie stirred in her arms. She forced herself to breathe, to lower her volume. Freedom isn't just the absence of your physical presence. It's knowing the truth about my own life. It's having accurate information to make decisions. You stole that from me. I know. Do you? Do you really understand what you did? Dante leaned forward, his hands clasped between his knees. I understand that I was selfish, that I prioritized my need to maintain a connection over your right to know the truth, that I told myself I was giving you space when really I was just controlling the situation in a different way. Then why did you do it? Because I'm a coward. The admission seemed to cost him. Because walking away completely would have meant accepting that I'd failed so badly, you'd rather struggle alone than accept my help. I couldn't face that, so I kept one thread, one connection, and told myself it was harmless. It wasn't harmless. No, it wasn't. Dr. Reynolds let the silence sit for a moment before speaking. Mr. Moretti, what do you think Miss Winters needs from you right now? An apology, real honesty, probably a punching bag with my face on it. Miss Winters, is that accurate? Maya looked at Dante, really looked at him, and tried to see past her anger to what she actually needed. I need to know this won't happen again. That you won't make decisions about my life without my knowledge or consent, even if you think you're protecting me. I can promise that. Can you? Because your whole life is built on control. Your business, your people, everything. You control it all. How do I trust that you won't do the same to me? Dante was quiet for a long moment. You probably can't. Not immediately. Trust has to be earned, and I destroyed what we had. He met her eyes. But I'm willing to earn it back, however long it takes. What does that look like practically, Buck? Dr. Reynolds asked. How do you propose to earn back trust? Transparency. I'll tell her everything. Where I'm going, who I'm meeting with, what business I'm conducting. I'll give her access to my calendar, my finances, my communications. He saw Maya's expression and added, I know that's not enough, but it's a start. It's also overwhelming, Maya said. I don't want to spend my life monitoring you like you're on parole. Then what do you want? The question hung in the air. What did she want? Maya looked down at Ellie, then around the beautiful room, then back at the man who'd been both her greatest love and her biggest fear. I want separation, she said slowly. Between your business and your home life, between the violence and the family. Dante's expression went very still. Maya, I know what you do. I'm not stupid. I know your money comes from places I don't want to think about too hard. I know you have blood on your hands. She forced herself to hold his gaze. I'm not asking you to become a saint, but I am asking for clear boundaries. Ellie doesn't grow up seeing guns. She doesn't grow up meeting men who solve problems with violence. The business stays separate from the home. That's not always possible in my world. Then maybe we can't do this. Maya's voice was steady despite the fear coursing through her. Because I won't raise a daughter in a house where violence is normal. Dr. Reynolds interjected gently. Mr. Moretti, is there room for compromise here? Ways to maintain necessary security while creating the separation Ms. Winters is requesting. Dante stood, pacing to the window. Maya watched the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands flexed like he wanted to hit something. I can keep the worst of it away from the house, he said finally. No business meetings here. No discussions where she could overhear. Security stays professional. No visible weapons around Ellie. What about the men themselves? Maya pressed. The ones who work for you. The ones who've killed for me. Dante turned to face her. You want me to keep them away from our daughter? Yes. Including Marco. Including the men who've been protecting this house? Maya hesitated. Marco had been nothing but kind to her, and the guards had been respectful, professional, but she also knew what they were capable of. I want them to be staff, not family, employees who keep their distance, not father figures who teach her their values. Fair enough, Dante nodded slowly. Anything else? I want veto power over who has access to her. Anyone who comes into her life, nannies, tutors, guards, I approve first. Agreed. And I want us to have a real plan for transitioning out of the criminal side of your business. Not tomorrow, not next month, but a timeline, a path towards something legitimate. That request landed like a bomb in the quiet room. Dante stared at her, and Maya could see the calculations running behind his eyes. You're asking me to walk away from everything I've built. I'm asking you to build something new, for her. Maya's voice softened. I'm not naive enough to think it happens overnight. But if we're going to do this, if we're going to raise a daughter together, I need to know you're working toward a future where she doesn't have to be ashamed of her father's name. I would need time. Years, probably. You don't just walk away from my position. How many years? 5, maybe 10. It depends on how carefully I can transition power, how thoroughly I can clean up the operations worth saving and shut down the ones that aren't. 10 years is a long time. It's a realistic time frame for doing it without getting killed or leaving chaos behind. Dante returned to his chair. But I can start now. Begin shifting investments toward legitimate businesses. Bring in legal consultants to clean up the gray areas. Create separation between the old operations and new ventures. Dr. Reynolds made notes. Ms. Winters, is that acceptable? A long-term plan with demonstrable short-term progress? Maya thought about Ellie, about the woman she wanted her daughter to become. Could she really live for 10 years knowing Dante's business was still dirty, even if he was actively working to clean it? I want quarterly reviews, she said, with Dr. Reynolds or another neutral party. where you show me concrete progress, proof that you're actually transitioning, not just placating me. Agreed. And if you backslide, if I see you pulling deeper into that world instead of out of it, I walk. With Ellie. Dante's expression hardened. I won't agree to that. Ellie stays regardless. Then we're at an impasse. No. Dr. Reynolds held up a hand. We're at a point where we need more nuance. Mr. Moretti, why is that boundary unacceptable? Because I've already lost 3 months of my daughter's life. I'm not risking losing more because Maya decides my progress isn't fast enough. And Ms. Winters, why is that provision necessary? Because, without consequences, there's no incentive for him to actually change. He could string me along for years while nothing really shifts. Dr. Reynolds nodded slowly. What if we built in a different consequence structure? Not removing Ellie, but other penalties that matter to Mr. Moretti. Like what? Maya asked. Loss of access, Dante said quietly. Both women turned to look at him. If I backslide, I lose time with Ellie. Supervised visits only until I prove I'm back on track, and I lose access to you, to our family life. Separate residences until I earn my way back. Maya hadn't expected that. You'd agree to that? It's a better incentive than threats of complete loss. It gives me something concrete to work toward regaining. His eyes met hers. And it protects you both if I fail. The quarterly reviews would need to include behavioral assessments, Dr. Reynolds added, not just business metrics. We'd need to see evidence of personal change too, therapy for Mr. Moretti, anger management if needed, family counseling. I'll do whatever's required, Dante said. Maya felt something shift in her chest. This was more than she'd expected. Real structure, real accountability. It wasn't perfect, and it didn't erase the past, but it was more than she dared hope for. Okay, she said. Quarterly reviews with consequences. But I want it in writing. My lawyers will draw up a contract, Dante said. You'll have independent counsel review it before you sign anything. One more thing. Maya took a breath. I want my own money. Dante's brow furrowed. You have access to all our accounts. No, my own money. Income that's mine, that I earn, that you can't touch or control. She saw his expression start to darken and pushed forward. I need financial autonomy, Dante. I need to know that if I stay, it's because I choose to, not because I'm trapped by economics. What are you suggesting? I want a career, something that's mine. Whether that's finishing my degree, starting a business, whatever. I want income that comes from my own work. You have a 3-month-old baby, which is why I'm not saying it happens tomorrow, but within a year, I want to be building something that's mine. She held his gaze. Can you accept that? Dante was quiet for a long moment. Maya could see the struggle on his face, the instinct to protect warring with the need to control, both battling against what she was actually asking for. Yes, he said finally, but I want you to be safe. Whatever you do, wherever you work, I need to know you're protected. Reasonable security, not a shadow detail of 12 armed men. Reasonable security, Dante agreed. That we define together. Dr. Reynolds smiled. This is excellent progress. We've identified several key areas: business separation, long-term transition planning, quarterly accountability, and Ms. Winters' financial autonomy. These are solid building blocks. But they're just words right now, Maya said. How do we know any of this will actually happen? We start small, Dr. Reynolds said, with immediate, verifiable changes. Mr. Moretti, what can you do in the next week to demonstrate good faith? Dante thought for a moment. I can move all business meetings off the estate. I can have my lawyers draft the accountability contract. I can set up accounts in Maya's name with funds she controls independently, and I can bring in consultants to start mapping the business transition. And I can start looking at degree programs, Maya added. Figure out what I want to study, what career makes sense with a baby. Good. Concrete actions, near-term deadlines. Dr. Reynolds closed her notebook. I'd like to meet with you both again in 3 days. Individual sessions in between if needed. How does that sound? Maya looked at Dante, trying to read his expression. He looked tired but determined, and something in his eyes reminded her of the man she'd fallen in love with. The one who existed before the violence and secrets built walls between them. 3 days, she agreed. After Dr. Reynolds left, Maya and Dante sat in uncomfortable silence. Ellie had woken during the session and was watching them both with solemn, dark eyes. "Can I hold her?" Dante asked quietly. Maya hesitated, then passed Ellie over. She watched as Dante's entire demeanor softened, the ruthless boss disappearing into the uncertain father. "She's getting bigger," he said. 3 days of regular feeding will do that. "Dr. Castellano said you've gained weight, too. That's good." "Don't." "Don't what?" "Don't make it about my appearance. Don't make it about you being right that I needed help." Maya stood, suddenly needing distance. "I'm going for a walk." "Maya, I need air. I need space. I need 10 minutes where I'm not negotiating my own life." She headed for the door, then stopped and turned back. "She'll need to eat soon. Bottles are in the nursery fridge." "I know where the bottles are." "Right. Of course you do." Maya walked out before he could see the tears threatening to fall. She made it to the garden before she broke. The estate gardens were massive, carefully designed to create pockets of privacy within the manicured beauty. Maya found a bench hidden behind a hedge of roses that were still blooming despite the November chill, and she let herself cry for the first time since she'd made that phone call. She cried for the woman she'd been 6 months ago, walking away from this house with nothing but pride and fear. She cried for the months of struggle, the nights of hunger, the terrible math of choosing between feeding herself and feeding her daughter. She cried for the divorce that never was, for the freedom that had been an illusion, for the trust that had been broken before she even knew it existed. And then she cried because part of her, some traitorous, weak part, was relieved to be back. "I thought I'd find you here." Maya's head snapped up to see Marco standing a respectful distance away, his expression gentle. "Are you following me?" "Maintaining perimeter security. If you happen to be on the perimeter, that's coincidence." The ghost of a smile crossed his scarred face. "You used to come to this bench when you needed to think." Before. When she'd been Dante's wife in truth, not just on paper. When she'd tried to make this life work and failed. "I should have known nothing stays private in this house," Maya said bitterly. "I'm not here to report on you. I'm here because you look like you could use a friend, and I remember when we used to be friendly." Marco moved closer but didn't sit. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you're back. Even though I left him, you did what you had to do. No one who knows what this life really costs would blame you for running from it." Marco's voice was quiet. "I've worked for Mr. Moretti for 12 years. I've seen what he's capable of when he's focused on something. And I've never seen him as focused as he is on making this right with you. He lied to me for 6 months. Yeah, that was wrong, but it was also the only thread he had left, and he was desperate enough to hold on to it anyway." Marco finally sat, keeping distance between them. "I'm not defending it. I'm just saying I understand why he did it." "That's not good enough." "No, it's not. But maybe it's a start." Marco looked out over the gardens. "He's been different the last 3 days since you came back, more focused, more careful. I've seen him with Ellie, and it's like watching someone discover they have a heart for the first time." "He's always had a heart." "For you, yeah. For business, absolutely. But this is different. She's making him human in ways I didn't think were possible." Maya wiped her eyes. "I don't know if I can do this, Marco. Live here, raise a daughter in this world, watch her grow up knowing her father's money comes from blood. Then change it. I can't change who he is." "Maybe not. But you're the only person he'd actually change for." Marco stood. "I should get back to rounds. But Ms. Winters, Maya, give him the chance to prove he's serious. He might surprise you." Marco left, and Maya sat alone with her thoughts and the roses that refused to die despite the cold. When she finally returned to the house, she found Dante in the nursery, swaying gently with Ellie against his shoulder. He was singing something low and soft in Italian, a lullaby maybe, or just nonsense syllables meant to soothe. He looked up when she entered, and their eyes met across the dimming room. "She wouldn't settle," he said quietly. "I tried the bottle, tried changing her, tried everything Dr. Castellano suggested, but she just kept fussing until I started singing." "She likes your voice." Or she's just exhausted and any noise would have worked. But he was smiling slightly. How was your walk? Clarifying, Maya moved closer, watching Ellie's eyes drift closed. I've been thinking about what we talked about in the session. And? And I think we need more than quarterly reviews. I think we need weekly check-ins. Just you and me talking about how things are going. No therapists, no mediators, just honest conversation. Dante's expression shifted. You want to talk to me? I want us to learn how to communicate without it becoming a war. We used to be able to do that. Before everything went wrong. We did. He transferred Ellie to the crib with practiced care, then turned to face Maya fully. I'd like that. The talking, I mean. There are going to be rules. Of course there are. No yelling, no walking away when things get hard, and absolute honesty, even when the truth is ugly. I can do that. Can you? Because honesty hasn't exactly been your strong suit. The barb hit its mark. Dante flinched but didn't look away. You're right. I've lied by omission, I've manipulated through silence, I've controlled through information asymmetry. That ends now. Pretty words. Then let me prove it with actions. He reached for his phone, pulled up something, and handed it to her. My calendar. Every meeting, every appointment, every phone call scheduled. I'm giving you access. You can see everything. Maya took the phone, scanning through the entries. Business meetings at restaurants across the city, calls with people whose names she recognized from Dante's organization. A standing weekly appointment labeled simply Dr. M. Who's Dr. M? My therapist. Started seeing him 2 months ago. Maya's head snapped up. You're in therapy? Individual counseling, twice a week. Dr. Reynolds recommended him when I first reached out about family mediation. Dante's voice was quiet. I'm working on my control issues, on the reasons I manipulate instead of communicate, on how to be a better partner and father. You never told me. You weren't speaking to me. And I wanted to have some progress to show you before I brought it up. He reclaimed his phone, then pulled up another app. This is the business transition plan my consultants have been developing. It's preliminary, but it shows how we could shift from current operations to legitimate enterprises over a 10-year period. Maya scrolled through pages of financial projections, risk assessments, transition timelines. It was thorough, professional, and clearly expensive. When did you start this? 4 months ago, right after I tracked you down and realized you were pregnant. His eyes met hers. I knew if I ever got a second chance, I'd need more than promises. I'd need proof that I was serious about change. So you've been planning this since before I called. I've been planning for the possibility of you coming back since the day you left. Some of it was delusion, some of it was hope, but all of it was real work toward becoming someone you might not have to run from. Maya didn't know what to say to that. Dante had always been good with grand gestures, with overwhelming displays meant to sweep her off her feet. But this felt different, quieter, more sustainable, more like actual change. I'm still angry at you, she said finally. You should be. I'd be worried if you weren't. And I don't forgive you for the divorce papers. I don't forgive me either. But, Maya took a breath, but I'm willing to try, to see if you really mean all this, to see if we can build something different than what we had before. Dante's expression cracked open with relief so profound it almost hurt to look at. That's all I'm asking for, a chance. 1 week, Maya reminded him. That was the deal. After 7 days, we renegotiate. Then I have 4 days left to prove I'm worth the risk. Maya looked at him, this complicated, dangerous, devoted man who'd lied to keep her, and was now trying to change to keep her choosing to stay. She thought about the quarterly reviews and the therapy appointments and the business transition plans. She thought about Ellie sleeping peacefully in a nursery that had been waiting for her for months, and she thought about the woman she wanted to be. Not trapped, not desperate, but strong enough to demand better and brave enough to believe change was possible. 4 days, she agreed. Make them count. Dante smiled, a real smile, unguarded and warm. I fully intend to. The paternity results arrived on day 5, delivered by courier in a sealed envelope that sat on the breakfast table like a small bomb while Maya fed Ellie her morning bottle. Dante stared at it, his coffee cooling in his hand, and made no move to pick it up. Aren't you going to open it? Maya asked. I don't need to. I already know. You can't know. Not for certain. Look at her, Maya. Dante's voice was soft. Really look at her. The shape of her eyes, the way her mouth curves when she's about to cry, the stubborn set of her jaw when she doesn't want the bottle. That's all me. Maya glanced down at Ellie, who was indeed fighting the bottle in that particular way she had, turning her head with determined resistance before finally giving in. It was exactly how Dante approached things he didn't want but knew he needed. Fine, Maya said. Then opening it won't matter. It'll just confirm what you already believe. Dante reached for the envelope but didn't tear it open. His hands, which Maya had seen steady while holding guns and signing death warrants, trembled slightly. What if I'm wrong? He asked quietly. What if she's not mine and I've been building all these plans around a fantasy? Then she's still a baby who needs a home, and you're still the man who's been acting like her father for 5 days. Maya shifted Ellie to her shoulder for burping. Biology doesn't undo that. It changes everything. Does it? Because you've been the one getting up at 3 a.m. to help with feedings. You're the one who spent 2 hours yesterday reading parenting books like they were battle strategies. You're the one who interviews nanny candidates like you're vetting them for the CIA. Maya met his eyes. If the test says you're not her biological father, are you going to walk away from her? The question hung in the air between them. Dante looked from Maya to Ellie and back again, and something resolute settled in his expression. No, he said. I'm her father regardless of what some lab says. If she's not biologically mine, I'll adopt her, make it legal and permanent. Just like that? Just like that. He finally opened the envelope, scanned the contents, and released a breath he seemed to have been holding for days. 99.9% probability of paternity. She's mine. Maya felt something loosen in her chest that she hadn't realized was tight. Okay then. Okay then, Dante echoed. He stood, crossed to where Maya sat, and pressed a kiss to Ellie's dark curls. Hey, baby girl, it's official. You're stuck with me. Ellie burped in response, and despite everything, Maya laughed. The moment broke when Dante's phone buzzed with an incoming call. He glanced at the screen and his expression shuddered. I need to take this, he said. Business? Yes, but I'll take it in my office. I'll keep it separate, like we agreed. He left the room, and Maya heard his voice drop to that particular tone he used for dangerous conversations. Cold, controlled, absolute. She tried not to listen, tried to focus on Ellie, but pieces drifted through anyway. I don't care what Castellano thinks he's owed. The terms were clear. If he can't meet them, we move on to alternative solutions. Maya's stomach turned. Alternative solutions. She knew what that meant in Dante's world. When he returned 20 minutes later, she was in the nursery changing Ellie's diaper with the kind of focused attention that suggested she was deliberately not thinking about what she'd overheard. That was Marco, Dante said from the doorway. There's a situation with one of our suppliers. I need to handle it in person. What kind of situation? The kind where someone thinks they can renegotiate terms after we've already reached an agreement. He leaned against the doorframe. I'll be gone most of the day. Back by dinner. Will it be violent? The directness of the question seemed to catch him off guard. I don't know yet. Probably not, but possibly. If you kill someone today, I want to know about it. Dante went very still. Maya, you promised honesty. Absolute honesty, even when the truth is ugly. If you're going to end someone's life today, I need to know that when you come home and hold our daughter. Maya finished fastening Ellie's onesie and picked her up. I'm not asking you to confess details. I'm asking you not to pretend your hands are clean when they're covered in blood. And if I tell you I did kill someone, what then? Then I know what I'm dealing with. Then I can make informed choices about how close I let you get to Ellie. Then there are no surprises. She held his gaze. Can you do that? Can you be honest about the violence? Dante crossed his arms, and Maya could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. He was weighing how much truth she could handle against how much deception he could maintain. Yes, he said finally. If today requires violence, I'll tell you. But Maya, you need to understand something. My world doesn't always give me the option of walking away from necessary actions. Sometimes violence is the only language people understand. I know. I've always known what you are. Maya's voice softened slightly. But I need you to know that every time you choose violence, you're choosing to stay in that world a little longer. Every problem you solve with blood is a problem that delays us getting out. Some problems can't be solved any other way. Then those are the problems that cost you time with your family. She shifted Ellie to her other arm. That's the consequence we agreed on. Backsliding means reduced access. So before you decide how to handle Castellano or whoever, ask yourself if it's worth missing bedtime stories. If it's worth supervised visits instead of being a full-time father. Dante's jaw tightened. You're asking me to let people walk all over me, to show weakness that could get us all killed. I'm asking you to find solutions that don't involve murder. I'm asking you to be smarter than violence. Maya moved closer. You're supposed to be this brilliant strategist. Prove it. Solve your problems without adding to your body count. And if I can't, then you accept the consequences we negotiated. Which means tonight you sleep in the guest wing, not in the suite next to the nursery. And tomorrow you see Ellie during supervised hours only until you prove you're committed to change. That's not fair. Neither is raising a daughter with a father who solves problems by killing people. But here we are. Maya walked past him toward the door. I'm taking Ellie to the garden. Make your choice, Dante, but make it knowing what it costs. She left him standing in the nursery, and she didn't look back. Maya spent the afternoon in the garden with Ellie, trying not to watch the driveway for Dante's return. Dr. Reynolds called to check in, and Maya found herself confessing the morning's confrontation. How do you feel about the ultimatum you gave him? Dr. Reynolds asked. Terrified that he'll choose violence anyway and prove I can't trust him. Terrified that he'll resent me for forcing impossible choices. Maya adjusted the blanket around Ellie, but also certain that if I don't hold this line, nothing will ever change. That's wisdom, not cruelty. You're establishing boundaries that protect both you and Ellie. Whether he respects them tells you everything you need to know about his commitment to change. And if he doesn't, then you have your answer about whether this arrangement can work long term. Dr. Reynolds paused. But Maya, I want you to consider something. You left him once when the situation became unbearable. You survived alone with a newborn for 3 months. You're stronger than you think. Whatever he chooses today, you'll handle it. After the call ended, Maya sat with that truth. She was stronger than she'd given herself credit for. The months of struggle had proved she could survive without Dante's wealth and protection. She was choosing to stay, choosing to try. But she wasn't trapped. That knowledge settled something in her chest. Dante returned at 6, just as the November sun was setting and turning the gardens golden. Maya watched him get out of the car, watched Marco say something that made Dante's shoulders tighten, watched him stand in the driveway for a long moment before heading inside. She met him in the blue sitting room, the same place they'd had their first mediation session. Ellie was with the nanny, a kind woman named Sarah who'd passed Maya's vetting with flying colors. Dante looked tired but unharmed. His clothes were immaculate, his hands clean, but Maya had learned long ago that absence of blood didn't mean absence of violence. Well? She asked. Dante poured himself 2 fingers of scotch, downed it, and poured another before answering. Castellano and I reached an understanding. No one died. Did anyone get hurt? Define hurt. Dante. He set down the glass. I broke his hand. 3 fingers. He'll recover, but he won't forget the lesson about honoring agreements. Maya felt her stomach turn. That's still violence. That's restraint. 6 months ago, I would have put a bullet in his head and moved on to the next problem. Today, I chose a solution that leaves him breathing and terrified enough not to cross me again. Dante's voice was hard. I'm trying, Maya. But I can't transform overnight into someone who solves every problem with conversation and compromise. That's not the world I live in. Then maybe you need to start changing the world you live in instead of making excuses for staying in it. I am changing it. Did you even look at the transition plan? I'm liquidating assets, shifting investments, moving money into legitimate ventures. But that takes time, and meanwhile, I still have obligations and enemies and situations that require immediate resolution. Immediate violence, you mean? Yes, immediate violence, because sometimes that's what survival requires in my world. Dante moved closer, and Maya could see frustration and exhaustion warring in his expression. I'm doing everything you asked: therapy, business transition, keeping violence away from Ellie, being honest about my choices. But you're acting like anything short of complete transformation right now is failure. Because every broken hand is a choice to stay in that world instead of walking away from it. I can't just walk away. You don't retire from my position without consequences. People I've dealt with, enemies I've made, they don't just let you peacefully transition to civilian life. Showing weakness gets people killed. Then kill them and lose your family, or find another way and keep us. Those are your options. Maya's voice was steady despite the tears threatening to fall. I told you the consequence for backsliding. You chose violence today, so you've chosen supervised access until you prove otherwise. Over a broken hand? Over choosing restraint when I could have chosen death? Over choosing to break someone's bones instead of finding a non-violent solution? Yes. Maya stood. I'm not punishing you for being imperfect. I'm enforcing the boundary we agreed on. Violence equals reduced access. You committed violence. Now you face the consequence. Dante's expression went cold in that way that used to terrify her. So what? I don't get to see my daughter tonight? You can see her at breakfast tomorrow, with me present. Supervised visit for 1 hour. Then we'll reassess based on your choices over the next few days. This is insane. This is accountability, something you've never had to face before. Maya moved toward the door. I'll have staff prepare the guest wing. You'll stay there tonight. Maya, you promised to accept the consequences. You agreed to this structure. Are you going back on your word already? That stopped him. Dante Moretti was many things, but a man who broke his promises was not one of them. His word, once given, was supposed to be absolute. No, he said finally. I agreed to the terms. I'll honor them. Then I'll see you at breakfast, 8 a.m. in the nursery. Maya left before he could see her hands shaking. She spent the evening in her suite with Ellie, trying not to think about Dante alone in the guest wing, trying not to feel guilty for enforcing boundaries that were designed to protect her daughter, trying not to question whether she was being too harsh or not harsh enough. Doctor, Reynolds called again at 9. I heard about today's outcome, she said without preamble. How are you feeling? Like I just declared war on the most dangerous man I know. You didn't declare war. You held a boundary. There's a difference. Dr. Reynolds' voice was calm. But I imagine he's not happy. He thinks I'm being unreasonable, that choosing not to kill someone should count as progress. It is progress, but it's not the same as choosing nonviolence. The question is whether he can see that distinction. I don't know. Maybe I'm asking too much. Maybe broken fingers are the best I can hope for. Or maybe you're asking exactly enough and he needs to rise to meet it. Dr. Reynolds paused. Maya, what scares you more? That he won't change, or that enforcing consequences means being alone again? The question cut straight to the fear Maya had been avoiding. Both. I don't want to raise Ellie alone again, but I also don't want to raise her in a house where violence is normalized and excused. Those fears are in tension with each other. You'll have to choose which one you're willing to live with. After the call, Maya stood at the window watching the lights of the estate reflect off the gardens. Somewhere in this massive house, Dante was facing consequences for the first time in his adult life. And somewhere in Maya's arms, Ellie slept peacefully, unaware that her parents were fighting a war that would determine what kind of life she'd have. Maya pressed a kiss to her daughter's forehead and made a silent promise. Whatever happened with Dante, whatever choices he made or boundaries he crossed, Ellie would grow up knowing her mother fought for something better, even if it meant fighting alone. The next morning, Dante appeared in the nursery at exactly 8 a.m., looking like he hadn't slept. He was freshly showered and dressed, but dark circles shadowed his eyes and tension radiated from his shoulders. Good morning, Maya said carefully. Morning. His attention went immediately to Ellie, who was in her crib tracking the mobile above her head. Can I hold her? Yes, that's why you're here. Dante crossed to the crib and lifted Ellie with the gentle care that still surprised Maya every time she saw it. Their daughter made a happy gurgling sound and reached for his face with tiny hands. "Hey, baby girl," Dante murmured. "I missed you." "It was 12 hours," Maya said. 12 hours too long." He settled into the rocking chair, never taking his eyes off Ellie. "I've been thinking about what you said, about choosing violence versus finding other solutions." Maya sat on the ottoman across from him, waiting. "You're right," Dante continued. "Breaking Castellano's hand wasn't the only option. I could have frozen his assets, could have leveraged his family connections, could have destroyed his business reputation without touching him physically." He looked up at Maya. "I chose violence because it was faster and easier and more satisfying, not because it was necessary." "Thank you for admitting that." "I'm also angry that you're holding me to standards I've never had to meet before. Part of me wants to tell you this is who I am, and you need to accept it, or leave." He paused. "But the bigger part of me knows that who I've been isn't good enough for her, or for you." Maya felt something crack open in her chest. "Dante, I talked to Dr. Matthews last night, my therapist, emergency session because I was about to punch a hole in the wall." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "He pointed out that I've spent my entire adult life in environments where violence equals power, and asking me to give that up is asking me to fundamentally change how I see myself in the world. I know that's hard. It's terrifying, because if I'm not the man who controls through force, who am I? What do I have to offer?" He looked down at Ellie. "But then I look at her, and I think maybe I could be the man who protects without destroying, who leads without terrorizing, who builds something worth inheriting instead of something that needs to be dismantled. That's who I need you to be. I know, and I want to be that. But Maya, I need you to understand it's not going to be a straight line. There are going to be situations where I backslide, where I choose wrong because the old patterns are stronger than my new intentions. And when that happens, there will be consequences. Like yesterday. I know, and I'll accept them. But I need you to acknowledge that trying and failing is still progress. That choosing to break a hand instead of taking a life is movement in the right direction, even if it's not movement enough." Maya thought about that. He wasn't wrong. Restraint was progress. But was it enough progress? "I'll acknowledge movement," she said slowly. "But the consequences remain. Because the moment I start excusing violence as progress, we've lost the boundary that protects Ellie from that world." Dante nodded. "Fair. So what do I need to do to earn back unrestricted access?" "Show me a pattern of choosing nonviolence. Not just once. A consistent pattern over time. Prove that yesterday was a stumble, not your default setting." "How long?" "A week. 1 week of solving problems without physical violence. No broken bones, no blood, no intimidation through force." "Maya, I run a criminal empire. You're asking me to tie my hands while I'm still surrounded by wolves." "I'm asking you to be smarter than the wolves. You're supposed to be brilliant, Dante. Prove it by outthinking your problems instead of outmuscling them." He was quiet for a long moment, swaying slightly with Ellie. When he spoke again, his voice was thoughtful. "What if I bring in someone else to handle the situations that might require force? Keep my own hands clean while still addressing threats? That's just delegating the violence. It's still your choice, still your responsibility." "What if the violence is defensive? If someone comes at me or my family?" "Defending yourself or Ellie is different from breaking someone's hand over a business dispute. I'm not asking you to be a pacifist. I'm asking you to stop using violence as a first resort, second resort, third or fourth, after conversation, negotiation, economic pressure, legal maneuvering, and every other tool in your arsenal." Maya leaned forward. "You're one of the smartest men I've ever met. You built an empire from nothing. You navigate complex political and economic systems daily. The violence has always been the easy part for you. Now I'm asking you to do the hard part, solve problems without it." Dante looked at her with something like wonder. "You really believe I can do this? I wouldn't have stayed if I didn't. Even after yesterday? Yesterday told me you're capable of restraint, that when you're challenged, you can choose less violence, even if you can't choose none. That's a foundation to build on." Ellie made a sound, and Dante looked down at her with an expression that made Maya's throat tight. It was pure love mixed with determination, the look of a man who'd found something worth changing for. 1 week, he said. No violence. I'll figure out another way. And if you can't, then I accept the consequences and try harder the following week. He met Maya's eyes. But I will figure it out, because losing time with her is not an option I'm willing to accept long term. Good. Maya stood. You have 55 minutes left in this visit. What do you want to do with it? Tell me about her, what she did yesterday, what new things she's discovering. I want to hear everything. So Maya told him. About the way Ellie was starting to track objects with her eyes more consistently. About her newest sounds, the coos and gurgles that were precursors to language. About the way she seemed to recognize Maya's voice and turn toward it automatically. And Dante listened like she was describing miracles, because to him, she was. When the hour ended, Dante returned Ellie to Maya's arms with visible reluctance. Same time tomorrow? He asked. Same time tomorrow, and we'll reassess the boundaries based on how today goes. What about us? Do I get time with you too, or just supervised visits with Ellie? The question caught Maya off guard. In the focus on Ellie and violence and consequences, she'd almost forgotten that beneath everything else, they were still two people trying to figure out if they could be partners again. Dinner, she said. Tonight, just the two of us. We can talk about things that aren't business or violence or consequences. Like what? Like who we are now. What we want. Whether there's anything left of the people who fell in love before everything got so complicated. Something softened in Dante's expression. I'd like that. 7 o'clock, the small dining room. After he left, Maya held Ellie and tried to quiet the voice in her head that whispered she was making a terrible mistake, that giving Dante another chance, giving them another chance, was just setting herself up for the same heartbreak that had driven her away the first time. But another voice, stronger and more certain, reminded her that she wasn't the same woman who'd fled this house 6 months ago. She was harder now, more certain of her boundaries, more willing to demand better and walk away if she didn't get it. And Dante wasn't the same man either. He was scared and trying and fumbling his way toward change with the same intensity he'd once brought to building his empire. Maybe that would be enough. Maybe it wouldn't. But she owed it to Ellie to find out. The day passed in a strange rhythm of normal domestic activities punctuated by text messages from Dante. He sent photos of legal documents showing assets being transferred to Maya's name, updates on meetings with business consultants about the transition plan, a picture of a parenting book he'd just bought called Peaceful Conflict Resolution, Teaching Children Nonviolence. The irony wasn't lost on Maya. At 6:30, she handed Ellie over to Sarah for the evening and went to get ready for dinner. She stood in her closet, filled with clothes Dante had purchased based on her old sizes, then had altered when he realized she'd lost weight, and tried to decide who she wanted to be tonight. The woman in armor who kept all her defenses up, or the woman who was brave enough to be vulnerable with the man who'd hurt her? She chose a simple dress in deep green that made her eyes stand out and left her arms bare. No jewelry, minimal makeup. She wanted to be herself, not a performance. When she entered the small dining room, she found it transformed. Candlelight instead of the harsh chandelier. Music playing softly in the background. Jazz, the kind they used to listen to when they were first dating. And Dante standing by the window in dark slacks and a white shirt rolled to his elbows, looking more like the man she'd married than the crime boss he'd become. "You look beautiful," he said. "You look nervous." "I am nervous. I haven't had dinner alone with my wife in 6 months. I'm terrified of saying the wrong thing and losing whatever progress we've made." "Your wife?" Maya moved to the table where wine was already poured. "Is that really what I am, or am I just the woman you're legally bound to through technicality and deception?" "You're the woman I love, the mother of my child, the person I've spent 6 months missing so badly I could barely breathe." Dante joined her at the table. "The legal paperwork is just the framework. What we are to each other, that's something we're still figuring out." They sat, and staff appeared with the first course, a salad that looked like art. Maya recognized the restaurant it came from, the same place they'd had their first date 7 years ago. "You're trying to seduce me with nostalgia," she said. "I'm trying to remind you that we used to be good together, before everything got so complicated. We were good at the beginning, but the beginning was built on things you didn't tell me, about your business, about the violence, about what kind of life you were asking me to accept. I know. I thought if I could just make you love me enough, the rest wouldn't matter. That you'd overlook everything else because what we had was so good. That's not how it works. You can't build a marriage on selective truth and expect it to survive reality. Clearly, Dante took a drink of wine. So let me try something different. Ask me anything, anything at all, and I'll tell you the absolute truth, even if it's ugly. Maya considered. How many people have you killed? Dante didn't even flinch. Personally? 17. Ordered killed? I stopped counting at 50. The number hit her like a physical blow. She'd known it was high, but hearing the specific count made it real in a way it hadn't been before. Do you regret any of them? 3. 2 were mistakes. Wrong target, bad intelligence. 1 was a kid who got caught in crossfire. That one keeps me up at night. And the other 14 you killed personally? Deserved it by the rules of my world. Doesn't mean I'm proud of it, but I can live with it. Maya set down her fork. How am I supposed to raise a daughter with a man who's killed 17 people? By trusting that the man I'm trying to become is different from the man I was. By seeing that I'm doing the hard work of changing, even when it costs me. He leaned forward. I can't undo my past, Maya. I can't resurrect the dead or erase the choices I made, but I can make different choices going forward. I can be a better father than I was a boss. Can you? Or is that just what you're telling yourself to justify asking me to stay? I don't know, but I'm willing to spend the rest of my life trying to find out. They ate in silence for a while, the weight of confession sitting heavy between them. When the main course arrived, pasta carbonara, another callback to their early dates, Dante spoke again. My turn to ask a question. Fair. Did you ever love me? Really love me? Not just the version of me you wanted me to be? Maya thought about that. I loved who you were with me. The man who listened when I talked, who made me laugh, who held me like I was precious. I loved the person I saw in private moments when your guard was down. But not the rest of me. I tried to love all of you, but the violence, the blood and secrets and danger that I could never love. I could accept it for a while, could try to look past it, but love it? No. And now? After everything? Now I'm trying to love the man you're becoming while grieving the man I thought you were. Maya met his eyes. I'm trying to build something real with you instead of a fantasy, but that's harder. It requires seeing all of you, including the parts that scare me, and choosing to stay anyway. Are you? Staying? I'm here, aren't I? For one more day, then the week is up and we renegotiate. Maya had almost forgotten. Tomorrow was day 7. The deadline they'd set for deciding what came next. I've been thinking about that, she said slowly, about what I want from the next phase. Tell me. I want to go back to school, finish my degree, build a career that's mine. She saw him start to speak and held up a hand. I know you want to provide everything, but I need this, Dante. I need to be more than just your wife and Ellie's mother. I need to be myself too. What would you study? Social work? Maybe family counseling? I want to help other women who are trapped in impossible situations. Use what I've learned to make a difference. Dante smiled, and it was genuine. That's perfect. That's exactly who you are. Someone who fights for people who can't fight for themselves. You'll really support that? Even knowing it means I'll be gone part of the day? That I'll have commitments outside this house and this family? I'll support anything that makes you happy. As long as you come home to us at the end of the day. Us, Maya repeated. You're assuming there's an us. Aren't I part of the equation anymore? You're part of it, but you're not all of it. My life can't revolve around you the way it did before. I need my own identity, my own purpose. I understand that now. I didn't before, but I do now. Dante reached across the table, and after a moment's hesitation, Maya let him take her hand. Build your career. Be your own person. Just don't shut me out completely. Let me be part of your life instead of all of it. His hand was warm, familiar, and Maya felt the old pull toward him, the magnetic attraction that had drawn them together in the first place and had survived 6 months of separation and countless betrayals. I'm scared, she admitted. Scared that if I let myself love you again, you'll break my heart the same way you did before. I probably will. Not intentionally, but I'll mess up. I'll make wrong choices. I'll hurt you without meaning to. He squeezed her hand gently. But I'll also fight like hell not to. I'll do the work, show up for therapy, hold myself accountable. And when I fail, I'll accept the consequences and try harder next time. That's all I can ask for, I guess. Effort and honesty. You can ask for more than that. You can ask for all of it, the romance, the partnership, the happily ever after. I can't promise I'll deliver perfectly, but I can promise I'll try. Maya pulled her hand back, needing space to think. What about tomorrow, day 7? What are we deciding? Whether you stay longer. Whether we try for real instead of just trying to survive each other. Dante leaned back in his chair. I want you to stay, Maya. Not just for another week, but permanently. I want us to do this right. Co-parenting, partnership, eventually maybe even love again if we can build enough trust. And if I say no, if I decide I need to leave and figure out my life without you, then I'll hate it, but I'll respect it. I'll set up whatever support you need, housing, income, childcare, and we'll work out a custody arrangement that lets me be Ellie's father without trapping you in my world. The fact that he said it without hesitation, without trying to manipulate or control the outcome, meant more than any romantic gesture could have. I'll think about it, Maya said. I'll have an answer by tomorrow night. They finished dinner making careful small talk about safe topics. Ellie's development, the estate's gardens, books they'd both read recently. It was pleasant and superficial, and nothing like the intense, all-consuming passion that had defined their early relationship. But maybe that was better. Maybe this careful rebuilding was more sustainable than the whirlwind that had swept them both away before. When dinner ended, Dante walked her to her suite. At the door, he hesitated. Can I kiss you goodnight? He asked. Why? Because I miss you. Because I want to remember what it felt like when we were good together. Because I'm hoping you might miss me too. Maya looked at him, this dangerous, complicated, devoted man who was trying so hard to become someone better. She thought about the violence he'd committed and the change he was attempting, the lies he'd told and the truth he was offering now. Then she made a choice. She kissed him first, a gentle press of lips that tasted like wine and memory and possibility. It was nothing like their passionate kisses from before, the ones that had led to torn clothes and breathless promises. This was softer, more uncertain, a question rather than a demand. When she pulled back, Dante's eyes were dark with want and restraint. Tomorrow, she said, I'll give you my answer tomorrow. I'll be waiting. Maya slipped into her suite and closed the door, pressing her back against it and trying to calm her racing heart. She'd kissed him. After everything, after all the hurt and anger and betrayal, she'd kissed him and felt something stir that she'd thought was dead. The question was whether that something was enough to build a future on, or just the echo of a past that needed to stay buried. She had one day to decide. Maya woke on day 7 to sunlight streaming through her windows and the sound of raised voices downstairs. Her heart lurched. She grabbed her robe and rushed to the nursery, relief flooding through her when she found Ellie sleeping peacefully with Sarah sitting nearby doing needlepoint. What's happening? Maya asked quietly. Sarah looked up, concern creasing her kind face. Mr. Moretti had visitors arrive about 20 minutes ago. Unexpected, from what I gather. Marco tried to turn them away, but they insisted it was urgent business that couldn't wait. Maya's stomach dropped. Business. On day 7. The day Dante was supposed to prove he could manage his world without violence, without the old patterns that had defined his empire. Where are they? The front entrance, last I heard. Mr. Moretti hasn't let them past the foyer. Maya moved to the window that overlooked the circular drive and saw 3 black SUVs parked in a configuration that screamed security detail. Men in suits stood around the vehicles, and through the open front door she could see Dante's rigid posture as he faced someone she couldn't quite see. She shouldn't go down there, shouldn't insert herself into his business dealings. But something about the tension in Dante's shoulders made her grab Ellie's baby monitor and head for the stairs anyway. The voices grew clearer as she descended. Don't care what arrangements you think we had, Moretti. The terms have changed. The voice was unfamiliar, male, carrying an accent she couldn't quite place. Either you meet the new price or we take our product elsewhere. We had a contract, Dante's voice was ice, signed and witnessed. You don't get to renegotiate after delivery. Contracts mean nothing when the market shifts. You want the shipment, you pay what we're asking. Otherwise, we walk, and you explain to your buyers why you can't fulfill their orders. Maya reached the landing and saw the scene properly now. Dante stood in the foyer with Marco at his shoulder, facing three men who radiated the kind of casual violence that made her skin crawl. The leader was tall, scarred, with eyes that had seen too much death to care about adding more. "You walk, and you don't walk far," Dante said quietly. "I have your family's location, your daughter's school schedule, your wife's favorite shopping route. You really want to play this game with me?" The threat was delivered with such calm precision that it took Maya a moment to process what he'd actually said. When she did, rage flooded through her. He was threatening a man's family, a child, on the same day he was supposed to be proving he could solve problems without violence. "Dante," her voice cut through the tension like a blade. Every head turned. Dante's expression went from cold calculation to shock in an instant. "Maya, go back upstairs." "No." She descended the rest of the stairs, positioning herself where she could see both Dante and the visitors. "I heard what you just said about this man's daughter. This doesn't concern you. It concerns me when you threaten a child in our home, when you make those kinds of choices on the day you're supposed to be proving you can do better." The lead visitor's eyes moved between them with calculating interest. "Trouble in paradise, Moretti. Your woman doesn't approve of your methods?" "Shut up, Victor." Dante's voice carried warning. But Victor smiled. "Or what? You'll threaten my daughter again, in front of your wife who clearly has a problem with that approach?" He turned to Maya. "You should know your husband's reputation was built on exactly those kinds of threats. Children, wives, parents, nothing is off limits when Dante Moretti wants leverage." "I know what he's capable of," Maya said steadily. "That's why I left him. And that's why he's supposed to be changing. Is he now?" Victor's smile widened. "Tell me, Mrs. Moretti, how's that working out?" "Maya, go upstairs. Now." Dante's voice had dropped to that dangerous register that used to make her obey without question. But she wasn't that woman anymore. "No, because if I go upstairs, you're going to handle this the way you've always handled things, with threats and violence and choices that keep you trapped in this world." She looked at Victor. "What's the original contract price, and what are you asking for now?" "Maya, answer the question, Dante." His jaw clenched, but he spoke. "Original price was $2 million for the shipment. Victor wants $4 million. And the market price if you went to another supplier?" "3.5, but with delays that would cost me clients." Maya turned to Victor. "So you're asking for a premium of $500,000 over market value in exchange for immediate delivery. Smart woman, beauty, and brains." Victor's tone was mocking. "But business is business. We're asking $4 million because we can. And Mr. Moretti was threatening your family because he can. Where does that leave us? Two men playing power games while actual human beings hang in the balance?" Maya crossed her arms. "Here's an alternative. You honor the original contract price of $2 million. In exchange, Mr. Moretti provides you with a bonus service. Security consultation for your operations that's worth at least the $1 million difference you're seeking. His expertise in protective measures and risk assessment, which I'm told is substantial." Both men stared at her. Dante's expression was unreadable, but Victor looked intrigued. "Security consultation? My husband knows how to protect assets and people. That knowledge has value. You get it in exchange for honoring your original agreement. Everyone wins. No one's family gets threatened, and we all walk away from this without blood." "Maya, that's not how this works," Dante said. "Then make it work. You're supposed to be brilliant, remember? Find a solution that doesn't involve terrorizing a man's child." Victor studied her for a long moment, then laughed. "You've got fire, Mrs. Moretti. More than most men I negotiate with." He turned to Dante. "Your wife just offered me something actually valuable. Your expertise, which I know is worth more than money. I accept her terms. $2 million for the shipment, plus 6 months of security consultation. You help me protect my operations, I honor our contract, and we both profit long term." "And if I refuse?" Dante asked. "Then I walk, you lose your shipment, and your wife knows you chose pride over peace. Seems like a bad play all around." The silence stretched out. Maya could see the war happening behind Dante's eyes. The instinct to reject any deal he hadn't dictated warring with the reality that Maya had just offered him exactly what she'd demanded. A nonviolent solution that resolved the conflict without threats. Fine, Dante said finally. 2 million and 6 months consultation. But I want the contract amended in writing before any money or product changes hands. Agreed. My lawyers will send revised terms by end of day. Victor extended his hand, and after a moment, Dante shook it. Pleasure doing business with you, Moretti. And Mrs. Moretti, if you ever get tired of this one, I could use someone with your negotiation skills. I'll keep that in mind, Maya said dryly. Victor and his men left, the SUVs pulling away in a synchronized departure that spoke to serious money and organization. When the door closed, Dante turned to Maya with an expression she couldn't read. That was incredibly stupid, he said. That was me saving you from yourself. You had no business inserting yourself into my negotiations. You could have gotten hurt, could have made the situation worse, could have what? Shown you there was another way? Proved that you don't have to threaten children to get what you need? Maya's voice rose. You were about to throw away everything we've been working toward because some man challenged your authority. You were choosing ego over growth. I was choosing to protect our interests. Victor is dangerous, Maya. You don't show weakness to men like him. And what you were doing wasn't weakness, threatening a little girl because you couldn't think of a better strategy. She moved closer, anger and disappointment making her reckless. You told me you were trying. You promised me you'd find nonviolent solutions. And at the first real test, you went straight back to terrorizing people. I didn't actually hurt anyone. You threatened to. You told that man you knew his daughter's schedule, Dante. Do you not see how horrifying that is? How it proves you haven't changed at all? Marco cleared his throat from where he'd been standing silently. Boss, maybe you two should take this somewhere more private. Stay out of this, Marco, Dante snapped. No, he's right. Maya was already heading for the stairs. We need to talk. In the blue sitting room, now. She didn't wait to see if Dante would follow. She heard his footsteps behind her, heavy and angry, and when they reached the sitting room, she whirled to face him. Do you want to know what I was going to tell you tonight? She demanded, when you asked for my answer about staying. I can guess based on this conversation. I was going to say yes. I was going to tell you that despite everything, despite all the fear and hurt and uncertainty, I was willing to try. To build something new with you, to believe you could change. Her voice broke. But then I come downstairs and hear you threatening a child, and I realize maybe I've been lying to myself about what's possible. Dante's expression shuddered. So one mistake and you're done? One moment of falling back on old patterns, and all the progress means nothing? It's not about the mistake. It's about what the mistake reveals. When you're under pressure, when someone challenges you, your first instinct is still violence, still threats, still the exact behavior that drove me away the first time. I didn't hurt anyone. I found a peaceful resolution. Because I intervened, because I stopped you from going down that path. What happens next time when I'm not there? When you're alone with a problem and no one's watching to hold you accountable? Then I'll make the choice myself, like I did with Castellano. I chose restraint even though I wanted violence. You broke his hand, Dante. That's not restraint. That's just less violence than you could have done. And what you're asking for is perfection I can't deliver. You want me to transform overnight from someone who's lived by violence for 20 years into someone who solves everything with conversation and compromise. That's not realistic. I'm not asking for perfection. I'm asking for genuine effort. And what I saw downstairs wasn't effort. It was reflex. It was you defaulting to intimidation because it's easier than thinking. Dante paced to the window, his hands clenched into fists. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, but no less intense. You're right. You're absolutely right. And I hate it. I hate that my first instinct is still to threaten and control. I hate that 20 years of building power through fear can't be undone in 7 days of trying. I know it's hard. No, you don't. You have no idea what it's like to have violence be your native language, to have spent so long surviving through intimidation that any other approach feels like suicide. And he turned to face her. But I'm trying, Maya. I hired therapists. I'm dismantling my empire piece by piece. I'm doing everything you asked and more, and it's still not enough for you. Because you're not doing it for the right reasons. You're doing it to keep me, not because you actually want to change. What's the difference? The outcome is the same. The difference is sustainability. If you're only changing because I'm forcing you to, then the second I'm not watching, you'll revert. But if you change because you genuinely want to be better, for Ellie, for yourself, not just for me, then it lasts. So what do you want from me? Tell me and I'll do it. I want you to want to change, not because I'm making you, but because you look at our daughter and realize the man you are now isn't good enough for the father she deserves. Dante was silent for a long moment. Then he crossed to where Maya stood and took her hands, holding them gently despite the tension radiating through his body. I look at Ellie every day and see everything I've done wrong, he said quietly. Every violent choice, every threat, every person I've hurt, it's all there in the context of knowing I'm supposed to raise a child, teach her values, model what a good man looks like. And it terrifies me, because I don't know how to be that man. I've spent my entire adult life being the opposite of what she needs. His grip tightened slightly. But I want to learn, not just to keep you, though that's part of it, but because when I hold her, I feel like maybe I could be someone better, someone worth her love and respect. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. That's what I need to hear, that you want this for her, not just for me. I want it for all of us. I want Ellie to grow up proud of her father instead of ashamed. I want you to be able to love me without compromising your values. And I want to be able to look at myself in the mirror without seeing a monster. You're not a monster. I've done monstrous things. Yes, but monsters don't try to change. Monsters don't go to therapy twice a week and read parenting books and negotiate contracts instead of breaking bones. I almost threatened a child this morning. But you didn't. Because I showed you another way, and you took it. That's growth, Dante. It's not perfect, but it's real. He pulled her closer, resting his forehead against hers. Tell me you're still willing to try. Tell me this morning didn't destroy whatever chance we had. Maya thought about the week they'd had. The fights and negotiations, the supervised visits and consequence-laden boundaries. The moments of tenderness mixed with flashes of the violence that still lived in him. The genuine effort he was making warring with decades of ingrained patterns. I'm willing to try, she said finally, but on new terms. What terms? We bring Dr. Reynolds in more frequently. Not just mediation, but active therapy for both of us. Individual and couples work. Agreed. And we add a new consequence structure. Every time you default to violent solutions, you don't just lose access to Ellie. You also have to donate a significant amount to organizations that help victims of violence. Make your old patterns actively cost you in ways that matter. Dante pulled back slightly to look at her. How much is significant? 100,000 per incident, to be split between domestic violence shelters, trauma counseling programs, and witness protection funds. You're asking me to pay 6 figures every time I mess up? I'm asking you to make your failures so expensive that you can't afford to keep making them. Money matters to you. Make it hurt. He studied her face, and she could see the calculation happening. It was a steep price, deliberately so. But it was also finite, measurable, something he could budget for even as he worked to eliminate the need. Okay, he said, 100,000 per incident, documented and verified donations. I'll have my accountant set up a fund. And one more thing. There's always one more thing with you. I want veto power over your business decisions for the next year. Not control, but consultation. Any major move you make, I get to weigh in. If I think it crosses the line into violence or illegality, you have to seriously consider alternatives. Maya, that's asking me to give you control over my entire operation. No, it's asking you to include me as a partner instead of keeping me separate. If we're doing this, if we're really building a life together, then I need to know what you're doing. I need to have a voice in decisions that impact our family. And if we disagree on a decision, then we negotiate, like adults, like partners, until we find a solution we can both live with. Dante was quiet for so long Maya thought he might refuse. This was asking more than she'd asked before. Real power over the empire he'd built, real say in how he conducted his business. It went against everything he was, everything he'd built his identity on. "A year," he said finally. "You get consultation rights for 1 year. After that, we reassess based on how well it's worked. But Maya, this goes both ways. You consult me on your decisions too. Career, school, anything major. We're partners or we're not. Can't be one-sided." "Fair. Full partnership with mutual consultation." "Then yes, you get veto power on business decisions for the next year." Maya felt something shift in her chest. He was really doing this, really giving her the kind of access and authority she'd never dreamed he'd surrender. "There's something you should know," Dante continued. "The deal with Victor this morning, the security consultation you negotiated, that's actually brilliant business strategy. His operation has weak points I could shore up, and doing so creates a long-term relationship that's worth more than the extra million he was asking for. You didn't just find a peaceful solution, you found a profitable one. So you're saying I'm good at this? I'm saying you might have a talent for negotiation that I've been too stupid to recognize. You see angles I miss because I'm too focused on power and control." He smiled slightly. "Maybe part of my transition plan should include bringing you in as an actual business consultant. Pay you for your expertise." "I don't want to be part of your criminal empire." "But you do want financial independence in your own career. What if we could structure it so you're consulting on the legitimate operations? The businesses we're building as part of the transition, you could help shape what we're becoming instead of what we've been." Maya turned the idea over in her mind. It was tempting, using her skills to actively participate in dismantling the parts of Dante's empire that were most destructive while building something better. But it was also dangerous, a blurring of lines that could trap her even more deeply in his world. "Let me think about it," she said. "After I've started school and figured out what I actually want to do long term. This doesn't have to be decided today." "Fair enough." Dante's hand slid to her waist, pulling her closer. "Can I ask what you were planning to say tonight, before this morning's disaster?" "I was going to say yes to staying, to trying to build something real with you." "Was?" "Am." Maya let herself lean into him. "This morning scared me, reminded me how far you still have to go, but it also showed me that when challenged, you can choose differently. You took the solution I offered even though it wasn't what you wanted. That's growth. So you'll stay, for real this time, not just another week?" "I'll stay. But Dante, the consequences remain. The boundaries stay firm. And the second I feel like you're reverting more than you're growing, I reserve the right to reassess. That's all I can ask for." He kissed her forehead, then her cheek, then hovered near her mouth. "Can I kiss you properly now? Or is that off limits until I prove myself further?" Maya smiled despite the seriousness of everything they'd discussed. "You can kiss me, but if you turn it into something more, we're going to have a different conversation about timing and trust and whether I'm ready for that." "Just a kiss then. I can work with that." When his lips met hers, it was different from the gentle goodnight kiss they'd shared before. This one carried heat and promise, hunger tempered by restraint. It tasted like possibility and danger in equal measure, and Maya let herself fall into it for a moment before pulling back. "We should check on Ellie," she said, slightly breathless. "She's fine with Sarah." "We should check anyway." They went to the nursery together, finding Ellie awake and making the babbling sounds that were becoming more frequent. Sarah excused herself tactfully, and Maya and Dante stood over the crib watching their daughter discover her own hands with fascinated intensity. "She's going to be brilliant," Dante said quietly. "She's going to be better than both of us. She's going to have the best of both of us. Your compassion and strength, my determination and strategic thinking, none of the violence or fear. That's the goal." Dante reached into the crib and lifted Ellie out, holding her with the confidence that came from a week of practice. "Hey, baby girl, your mom and I just negotiated our future. Want to know what we decided?" Ellie gurgled and grabbed his finger. "We decided to try, to build something better than what we had before, to raise you in a home where love matters more than power, where problems get solved with words instead of weapons, where your father is someone you can be proud of." He looked at Maya. "Think we can pull it off?" "I think we can try. Whether we succeed is still to be determined. I'll take those odds." They spent the rest of the morning as a family, the three of them in the nursery playing with toys and reading board books with more pictures than words. It felt normal in a way that nothing had felt normal since Maya had made that desperate phone call a week ago. Like they might actually be able to do this, to be parents together, partners in building a life that was better than the one that had fallen apart. At lunch, Dr. Reynolds called to schedule their next session. "I heard there was an incident this morning," she said without preamble. "Want to talk about it?" "How did you hear about it?" Maya asked. "Mr. Moretti texted me. Asked for an emergency session to discuss what he called a significant backslide in judgment. That's growth, by the way, recognizing mistakes and seeking help instead of covering them up. We worked it out. New consequences, tighter boundaries. Good, but I'd still like to see you both tomorrow. Consolidate what you learned from this morning. Make sure you're on the same page going forward." After the call, Maya found Dante in his office reviewing the contracts Victor's lawyers had sent over. He looked up when she entered. "Everything okay?" "Dr. Reynolds wants to see us tomorrow. About this morning." "I know. I called her." He set down the contract. "I wanted professional guidance on how badly I'd messed up and what I needed to do to make it right. She's helping me understand the difference between reactive violence and proactive problem solving." "That's good." "She also told me I need to examine why my first instinct is still to threaten and control. Something about childhood trauma and learned survival mechanisms." He smiled wryly. "Turns out being raised by a violent father leaves some scars." Maya sat in the chair across from his desk. "You've never talked much about your father." "Because there's not much to say that doesn't sound like a sad cliché. He drank, he hit, he taught me that power comes from fear. I swore I'd never be like him, then built a life that's exactly what he modeled." "But you're trying to change that pattern. For her, for Ellie, so she doesn't grow up afraid of me the way I was afraid of him." "She won't, because you're aware of the cycle and actively working to break it. That's the difference." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Dante spoke again. "The donation you requested, the 100,000 per incident, I want to make the first payment today for this morning's threat. You didn't actually hurt anyone, but I would have if you hadn't stopped me. That's worth the consequence." He pulled up his computer and started typing. "Which organizations did you want it split between?" Maya gave him 3 names, watching as he transferred funds with the casual ease of someone for whom 6 figures was a rounding error. When it was done, he forwarded her the receipts. "There, first payment. Hopefully the last." "Hopefully. But probably not. I'm realistic about my limitations." He closed the computer. "What do you want to do for the rest of the day? It's your first official day of staying for real instead of staying on trial." "I want to look at school programs, start figuring out what I need to do to finish my degree." "I can help with that. I know people at most of the local universities." "No, I want to do this myself. No favors, no shortcuts, no Dante Moretti smoothing the path. Just me, applying as a regular student, earning my way." "You know that's going to be harder, right? Especially with a baby." "I know, but it'll be mine. That matters more than easy." Dante smiled, and it was full of genuine admiration. "You're going to be amazing. At school, at whatever career you choose, at showing Ellie what strength looks like. And you're going to be there supporting that instead of controlling it?" "I'm going to try. With professional help and consequence structures, and probably a lot of failures along the way. But yes, I'm going to try." Maya stood and moved around the desk to where Dante sat. She leaned down and kissed him gently. "That's all I can ask for. Effort and honesty and genuine attempts to be better. Then that's what I'll give you. Every day. For as long as you'll let me." As Maya left his office to start researching degree programs, she heard Ellie crying from the nursery, and both of them moved automatically toward the sound. They arrived at the same time, and Sarah smiled as she handed over their daughter. "She just wants attention. Nothing wrong. Just fussy." Dante took Ellie, and she immediately settled against his shoulder with a contented sigh. Maya watched them together and felt something in her chest expand with cautious hope. Maybe they really could do this. Maybe the man who'd built an empire on violence could become the father who built a home on love. Maybe the woman who'd fled in fear could become the partner who stayed by choice. Maybe day 7 wasn't an ending, but a beginning. Only time would tell. But for the first time since that desperate phone call in the rain, Maya believed they had a real chance at finding out. 3 months later, Maya stood in the kitchen of the estate at 6 in the morning, reviewing notes for her first day of classes while Ellie kicked happily in her bouncer on the counter. The acceptance letter from the university had arrived 6 weeks ago, and Maya had cried reading it, not because getting in was hard, but because she'd done it herself, with no intervention from Dante's connections or money. "You're up early," Dante said from the doorway, already dressed in running clothes. He'd started a morning routine that included a 5-mile run and meditation, part of Dr. Matthews' recommendations for managing stress without violence. "I'm nervous," Maya admitted. "It's been years since I was in a classroom." "You're going to be incredible." He crossed to kiss her forehead, then bent to make faces at Ellie, who rewarded him with delighted squeals. "What time is your first class?" 9. "Sarah's going to watch Ellie until noon, then you're on duty until I get back at 3. I've cleared my entire afternoon. Marco's handling the meetings I had scheduled." Dante straightened, and Maya saw the pride in his expression. "This is important. Your education, your career, it matters more than whatever business I had planned." It was a small thing, maybe, but it represented massive change. 3 months ago, Dante wouldn't have rescheduled anything for anyone. Now, he was actively restructuring his life around Maya's goals and Ellie's needs. "How did the meeting with the federal prosecutor go yesterday?" Maya asked. Dante's expression tightened slightly. "About as well as expected. They're willing to offer immunity in exchange for testimony against the Castellano family's operations. Full witness protection if we want it, though I negotiated to keep the estate and enough legitimate assets to maintain our lifestyle." This was the big move, the one they'd been planning for 2 months. Dante was turning state's witness against his former associates, trading information for a clean slate and protection for his family. It meant burning every bridge he'd built over 20 years, making enemies of people who'd once been allies, and trusting the government to keep them safe. It was also the only way to truly get out. "Are you sure about this?" Maya asked, not for the first time. "No, but I'm sure about you and Ellie. I'm sure that I want her to grow up with a father who's not looking over his shoulder for federal indictments or assassination attempts. I'm sure that the man I'm becoming can't coexist with the empire I built." He pulled Maya close. "So yes, I'm testifying. We're taking the deal. And in 6 months when the trials are over, we're starting completely fresh." Dante Moretti, law-abiding citizen. I never thought I'd see the day. Dante Moretti, husband and father who prioritizes his family over his ego. That's the bigger transformation. Maya tilted her head up to kiss him properly. No longer the tentative kisses of early reconciliation, but the deep familiar intimacy of partners who'd chosen each other repeatedly through hard conversations and harder changes. When they pulled apart, Ellie had managed to grab her own foot and was attempting to eat it with single-minded determination. "She's going to be walking soon," Dante said, watching their daughter with the same fascination he'd shown since the first time he held her. The pediatrician said maybe by 8 or 9 months. She's already trying to pull herself up on furniture. "Should we baby-proof more thoroughly? We live in a mansion with armed guards and priceless artwork. I think baby-proofing is the least of our concerns." Dante laughed, and the sound was lighter than Maya remembered from their early marriage. Therapy and the process of dismantling his empire had stripped away some of the darkness that had always shadowed him. He was still intense, still driven, but there was space now for joy. "I should finish my run," he said reluctantly. "But tonight, after Ellie's asleep, I want to hear everything about your first day, every detail. It's just orientation and introductory lectures. I don't care. I want to know what you're learning, who you're meeting, what you're thinking about your future." He kissed her again. "I'm proud of you, Maya, for building this, for demanding better, for not giving up on us even when I gave you every reason to." After he left, Maya finished her coffee and her notes, feeling the familiar swirl of excitement and terror that came with new beginnings. She'd fought so hard for this, for autonomy, for education, for a future that was hers to shape. And Dante had fought just as hard to become someone who could support that instead of controlling it. It wasn't perfect. They still had arguments about boundaries and business decisions. Dante still occasionally defaulted to old patterns of manipulation before catching himself. Maya still woke sometimes in the middle of the night, wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake coming back. But they were trying, really trying, and slowly, painfully, they were building something that felt sustainable. The session with Dr. Reynolds that afternoon was their 12th since that first mediation. They'd settled into a rhythm of weekly meetings, sometimes together, sometimes individual, always honest even when the truth was uncomfortable. "Tell me about the federal deal," Dr. Reynolds said after they'd settled into the familiar chairs of the blue sitting room. "It's happening," Dante said. "Testimony starts in 4 months. Full immunity, witness protection if needed, asset retention for legitimate holdings. How do you feel about that?" "Terrified." "Relieved." "Like I'm walking off a cliff and hoping there's ground on the other side." "Maya, how do you feel about it?" Maya considered. "Hopeful, but also aware that this is when it gets most dangerous. Dante's making enemies of very powerful people. Even with protection, there are risks." "We've discussed those risks," Dante said. "Increased security, potential relocation, changing identities if necessary. I won't let anything happen to them." "But you can't control everything," Dr. Reynolds pointed out gently. "That's been a major theme in your work, learning to accept that some things are outside your control and finding peace with uncertainty." "I'm working on it. But when it comes to their safety, I'll do whatever it takes." "Even if whatever it takes means violence? Even if protecting them requires you to become the man you're trying not to be?" The question hung in the air. Maya watched Dante struggle with it, saw the old instincts warring with new commitments. "I don't know," he said finally. "I want to say I'd stay committed to nonviolence regardless. But if someone threatened Ellie or Maya, I don't know that I could hold that line." "That's honest," Dr. Reynolds said, "and honesty is what we're building here. Maya, can you accept that answer?" "I have to, because I know it's true. If someone came after Ellie, I'd want Dante to do whatever was necessary to protect her. The difference is whether he goes looking for threats or only responds to real ones." "And I'm not going looking," Dante said firmly. "I'm not creating situations that require violence. I'm just acknowledging that if violence comes to us, I'll meet it." "That's a reasonable boundary," Dr. Reynolds agreed. "Defensive violence in protection of family is different from offensive violence in pursuit of power or revenge. Can you both live with that distinction?" They both nodded, and Dr. Reynolds made notes before moving on. "Maya, you started classes today. How did that go?" "Better than expected. I was worried I'd be the oldest person there, but there were several other adult students. And the professor for my Intro to Social Work class has an interesting background working with domestic violence survivors. Are you planning to disclose your own experiences?" "Eventually, maybe. Not the specifics about Dante, but the general experience of being in a complicated relationship and choosing to rebuild instead of just run. I think it could help other students understand that leaving isn't always the only answer." Dante's hand found hers, squeezing gently. "Speaking of rebuilding," Dr. Reynolds said, "where are you two on the intimacy spectrum?" "We focused a lot on practical matters, business transitions, co-parenting, trust building. But what about your marriage as a romantic partnership?" Maya and Dante exchanged glances. They'd been sharing a suite for the past month, sleeping in the same bed, though they'd been careful about physical intimacy beyond kissing. "We're taking it slow," Maya said. "By whose choice?" "Mine, mostly. I wanted to make sure we had a solid foundation before adding that layer of complication." "And Dante, you're okay with that pace?" "I'd be lying if I said I didn't want more. But I understand why Maya needs time. After everything I did, rushing her into physical intimacy would be another form of control." "That's very self-aware. Maya, do you feel pressured at all?" "No. Actually, Dante's been incredibly patient, almost too patient. Sometimes I wonder if he's still attracted to me after the pregnancy and everything." Dante turned to stare at her. "Are you serious? Maya, you're more beautiful now than the day I met you. Watching you become a mother, watching you grow stronger and more certain of yourself, it's the most attractive thing I've ever witnessed." "Then why haven't you pushed at all? Why are you so okay with just kissing goodnight and nothing more?" "Because I'm terrified of messing this up. Because for the first time in my life, I care more about your comfort than my desires, because I'd rather wait a year for you to be ready than rush you and lose you again." The vulnerability in his voice made Maya's chest ache. She turned to Dr. Reynolds. "Is this something we should work through here or in private?" "That depends. Do you feel safe discussing intimacy with Dante without mediation?" Maya thought about it. 3 months ago, the answer would have been no. But now, after weeks of therapy and honest conversations and Dante proving repeatedly that he could hear no without retaliating, she felt safer than she ever had. "Yes, I think we can handle this ourselves." "Then I'll give you homework. Have a real conversation about intimacy, what you both want, what you're afraid of, what pace feels right. Be honest even when it's uncomfortable. And check in with each other regularly instead of making assumptions." After the session, they picked up Ellie from Sarah and spent the evening as a family. Dinner together, bath time with Ellie, splashing enthusiastically and soaking them both, bedtime stories in the nursery, while their daughter fought sleep with admirable determination. When Ellie finally gave in and drifted off, Maya and Dante stood over her crib in familiar silence. "She's perfect," Dante whispered. "She's ours. Best thing I've ever made." They retreated to their suite, and Maya felt nervous energy building. The conversation Dr. Reynolds had assigned loomed ahead, and she wasn't sure how to start it. Dante solved the problem by pulling her onto the sofa and tucking her against his side. "Talk to me," he said, "about what you're thinking, what you're afraid of, what you want." Maya took a breath. "I'm afraid that if we sleep together, I'll lose some of the power I've built, that it'll shift our dynamic back toward how it was before, when I was more dependent and less certain of myself." "I can understand that fear. What would help prevent that?" "I don't know. Maybe knowing that even after we're physically intimate again, you'll still respect my boundaries. Still see me as an equal partner instead of someone you've conquered." "Maya, I have never seen you as someone to conquer. Even when I was at my worst, even when I was controlling and manipulative, I never saw you as less than me. Different from me, yes. Better than me in most ways, but never lesser. You tried to trap me. You lied about the divorce." "I did. Because I was afraid of losing you, not because I thought I owned you. There's a difference, though I admit it's a subtle one." Maya shifted to look at him properly. "What do you want? From me? From our marriage? From the future?" "I want you to be happy. I want Ellie to grow up secure and loved. I want to build a legitimate life that I'm not ashamed of. And yes, I want physical intimacy with you again, but only when you're ready. Only when it feels like a choice you're making from desire instead of obligation." "I do desire you," Maya admitted, "but I'm scared that if I show you that, you'll see it as permission to take more than I'm ready to give." Then we set very clear boundaries. We establish what's okay and what's not. And I respect those boundaries absolutely, even when it's hard. What if I change my mind in the middle? What if I say yes and then need to stop? Then we stop. Immediately, no questions, no pressure. Your body, your choice, always. The certainty in his voice settled something in Maya's chest. She leaned in and kissed him, deeper than their usual goodnight kisses, with intent behind it. When they pulled apart, Dante's eyes were dark with want, but also with restraint. "Are you sure?" he asked. "I'm sure I want to try, and I'm sure that if I need to stop, you'll respect that." "Always." They moved to the bedroom, and Maya felt her nervousness spike again. It had been so long, not since before she left him, before she even knew she was pregnant. Her body had changed, stretched, and softened in ways that made her self-conscious. Dante seemed to sense her hesitation. He cupped her face gently. "We don't have to do this tonight. We can wait as long as you need." "No, I want to. I don't look the way I used to, after the pregnancy, after everything." "You look like the woman who carried my daughter and survived months of struggle and came back to give me a chance I didn't deserve. You look like strength and courage and the best decision I ever made." He kissed her softly. "You're beautiful, Maya. More beautiful than memory, more beautiful than fantasy." His hands were gentle as he undressed her, reverent in a way she didn't remember from before. Then it had been passion and urgency, desire that consumed them both. Now it was slower, more intentional, weighted with everything they'd been through and everything they were trying to build. When they finally came together, it felt like a promise being made and kept simultaneously. Dante watched her face constantly, checking in without words, giving her space to guide the pace and intensity. And Maya let herself be vulnerable in a way she hadn't allowed since leaving him, trusting that he would handle her carefully, that he'd meant everything he'd promised about respecting her autonomy. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the darkness, and Maya felt tears slip down her face. "Did I hurt you?" Dante asked immediately, tension in his voice. "No, I didn't think we'd get here. I didn't think we could rebuild enough trust for this." "Neither did I." He pulled her closer. "Thank you for giving me this chance, for believing I could change enough to deserve you. You're not done changing. I know, but I'm making progress. We're making progress." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and for the first time since Maya had returned, she didn't wake in the middle of the night questioning her choices. The next 3 months passed in a rhythm of classes and family time and the slow dismantling of Dante's criminal empire. The federal testimony began in February, and Dante spent long days in protected courthouses detailing decades of illegal operations. Maya attended when she could, watching him systematically destroy the organization he'd built while former associates glared from the defense tables. It was dangerous and difficult and absolutely necessary. The threats started almost immediately. Anonymous calls, messages delivered through intermediaries, warnings that cooperating would have consequences. Security around the estate tripled, and Maya wasn't allowed to leave for classes without armed escorts. "I hate this," she told Dr. Reynolds during an individual session. "I hate feeling like we're under siege. I hate that Dante's choice to do the right thing puts us all at risk." "Are you reconsidering your decision to stay?" Maya thought about it. "No, because this is temporary. Once the trials are over, once we relocate and establish new identities if necessary, we'll be safe. But the old life would have been dangerous forever." "That's wisdom. You're choosing long-term safety over short-term comfort." "I'm choosing to believe that Dante's transformation is real and lasting, that the man testifying against his former empire isn't going to rebuild a new one somewhere else." "Do you believe that?" "Most days. Some days I worry he's going to miss the power too much. That legitimate business won't give him the same rush as crime did." "Have you talked to him about those fears?" "Not yet." "You should. Honest communication is what's kept you together this far." That night, after Ellie was asleep and they were curled together in bed, Maya brought it up. "Are you going to miss it? The empire, the power, the life you had?" Dante was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes I already do. There's something seductive about that kind of control, that kind of fear-based respect. It's addictive in ways I'm still processing with Dr. Matthews. That's what I'm afraid of, that you'll get bored with legitimate life and start chasing that high again. I won't lie and say I'll never be tempted. But Maya, every time I look at Ellie, every time I think about the kind of father I want to be, the temptation gets weaker. She's my addiction now. Being worthy of her love matters more than any empire. And what about being worthy of mine? That too. But in some ways, your love feels more conditional, like I have to keep earning it every day, which is probably healthy, actually. It keeps me accountable. My love isn't conditional, but my willingness to stay is. There's a difference." "Fair point." He kissed her temple. "Is there anything I can do to ease your fears? Any evidence I can provide that I'm committed to this new life?" Maya thought about it. "Tell me what you're planning. After the trials, after we relocate. What does our future look like?" "I've been working with consultants on establishing a venture capital firm focused on startups that address social issues, using my money and business acumen to fund companies that make the world better. It's legitimate, it's profitable, and it lets me still operate in high-stakes environments without the violence." "That sounds perfect for you. And I want you involved, not as my assistant or subordinate, but as a full partner. Your degree in social work will give you insights into which ventures actually help people versus which ones just sound good. We could build something meaningful together." The vision he painted was appealing, using their combined skills to create positive change, building wealth without exploitation, making Ellie proud instead of ashamed. It was everything Maya had hoped for when she demanded he transition away from crime. "I'd like that," she said. "Once I finish my degree and get some experience in the field. I don't want to jump straight into working with you before I know who I am professionally." "Absolutely. Build your own identity first. Then if you want to collaborate, we'll be coming together as equals instead of you being absorbed into my world." They made love again that night, less tentative than the first time, building a new vocabulary of intimacy that balanced passion with respect. And afterward, Maya felt certain in a way she hadn't before. They were going to make it. Not because it was easy, but because they were both willing to do the hard work of becoming people who could build a healthy partnership. The trials concluded in May with guilty verdicts across the board. Dante's testimony had been devastating and comprehensive, ensuring that his former associates would spend decades in prison. The federal prosecutor praised his cooperation and promised continued protection for his family. They moved in June to a smaller estate in Vermont, far from the city that had been both their home and their battlefield. New names, new identities, a fresh start in a place where no one knew Dante Moretti or his reputation. Maya enrolled in a local university to continue her degree. Dante established his venture capital firm under his new name, and Ellie celebrated her first birthday in a garden party with new friends who knew nothing about her father's past. On their first night in the new house, after Ellie was asleep and they'd finished unpacking the essentials, Maya and Dante stood on the porch watching fireflies dance across the lawn. "Do you regret it?" Maya asked. "Giving up everything you built?" "I gave up power built on fear and violence. What I gained was a family built on trust and love. That's not a trait I regret." "Even when you miss the old life?" "I miss some things. The adrenaline, the absolute control, the respect that came from being feared. But I don't miss who I had to be to maintain that. And I definitely don't miss living in constant paranoia, wondering which associate would betray me or which enemy would strike first." "What do you like about this life?" Dante pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. "I like waking up next to you without wondering if this is the day you'll leave again. I like watching Ellie grow without worrying she'll witness something that traumatizes her. I like knowing that when she's old enough to ask what I do for work, I can tell her the truth without shame." "And what will you tell her? About before?" "The truth, when she's old enough to understand it. That her father made terrible choices, hurt people, built an empire on pain, and that meeting her mother and having her as a daughter made him want to be better. That he's not proud of who he was, but he's working every day to become someone worthy of her love." Maya turned in his arms to face him. "She already loves you. She doesn't need you to earn it." "Maybe not, but I need to earn it anyway, for myself if not for her." They went inside, checking on Ellie one more time before heading to their own room. The house was smaller than the estate they'd left behind, but it felt more like home, less like a museum of wealth and more like a space for living. In bed, Maya curled against Dante's side in the familiar position they'd developed over the past months. "I'm proud of you," she said quietly, "for choosing this, for doing the hard thing instead of the easy thing. I'm proud of you too, for demanding better, for not settling, for loving me enough to believe change was possible even when I wasn't sure myself. We make a good team, the best team, you, me, and Ellie against the world. That's all I ever wanted. A family that was ours, built on choices instead of circumstances, with a future we got to define instead of one forced on us. Then that's what we'll keep building. One day, one choice, one moment of choosing each other at a time." Maya tilted her head up to kiss him, and in that kiss was everything they'd survived and everything they were becoming. It tasted like new beginnings and hard-won wisdom, like love that had been tested and had emerged stronger. When they pulled apart, Dante smiled at her with the kind of open warmth he'd rarely shown in the old life. "I love you, Maya Moretti, or whatever our last name is now. Morrison. We're the Morrisons now. And I love you too, Dante Morrison. The man you're becoming, the father you are, the partner you're learning to be. Not the man I was? Him too, in some ways. Because without him, we wouldn't have Ellie. And he had to exist so that you could become this. So yeah, I love all the versions of you, past, present, and future, as long as the future version keeps choosing growth over control." Deal. And you keep choosing to stay, keep demanding better, keep being the moral compass I've never had. They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other and in promises, in a house that held their future instead of their past. Through the baby monitor, they could hear Ellie's soft breathing, peaceful and content in a home where violence was history instead of present reality. Outside, Vermont summer sounds drifted through the open windows, crickets and nightbirds, the rustle of leaves in the breeze. Inside, a family slept soundly, no longer running from anything, no longer trapped by anything, just living the ordinary, extraordinary life they'd fought so hard to build. In the nursery, Ellie dreamed baby dreams, unaware that her parents had moved mountains to give her a future free from the shadows of her father's past, unaware that her mother had been brave enough to demand the impossible and her father had been strong enough to deliver it, unaware of all the ways she'd already changed them both just by existing. She would know someday. When she was older, when she asked questions about why they'd moved, why their last name had changed, why there were no photos from before she was born, they would tell her age-appropriate truths, gradually revealing the full story as she grew capable of understanding it. But for now, she was just a baby sleeping in a safe house, loved by parents who chose each other every day, despite how hard that choice sometimes was. And that was enough. That was everything. In their bedroom, Maya whispered into the darkness one more time. "Thank you." "For what?" Dante murmured, already half asleep. "For changing. For trying. For becoming someone I could choose to love instead of someone I had to escape from. Thank you for seeing who I could be when all you had evidence for was who I'd been. For believing in my capacity for growth when I didn't believe in it myself. We're going to make it, aren't we? All the way. The whole partnership, the whole future. Yeah, we are. Because we're both too stubborn to quit and too invested to fail. Because Ellie deserves parents who worked it out instead of giving up. And because despite everything, we're still the best thing that ever happened to each other." Maya smiled in the darkness. "Even better than the first time?" "Especially better than the first time, because this version is built on truth instead of fantasy, on choices instead of chemistry, on partnership instead of possession. I like this version of us. Me too." They drifted into sleep, and in the garden outside, the first light of dawn began to touch the sky. A new day, in a new life, in a new place, and they would face it together, partners in every sense, parents to a daughter who would never know the fear Maya had lived with, builders of a future that was finally, genuinely theirs to define. The cage door had closed that rainy November night when Maya made the call, but over time, with work and therapy and honest conversations and consequences enforced and boundaries respected, the cage had transformed into something else entirely. Not a trap, but a home. Not a prison, but a partnership. Not the end of Maya's freedom, but the beginning of a life she'd chosen freely, with eyes wide open and heart cautiously hopeful. And that made all the difference.